Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of What If Naruto Became Tobirama's Heir. If you enjoyed the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 6. Uzumaki Namikaze Household. Kushina walked in after some morning training with the twins before breakfast. She had seen Naruto left early to go for his walk. She came in and saw that Naruto's sandals were there on the front and walked upstairs as she saw him asleep in a deep slumber and smiled at his tired face as she walked to his bed. Menma followed her and saw her crouch down on his brother's bed and saw as she rubbed his head softly and brushed his hair as she kissed his forehead softly, and he smiled in his sleep while she brought the blanket up a bit to let her lazy little blonde sleep in today and stood up. Menma went down, not wanting to be seen like the spying kind, and walked down. He knew his mother loved his brother the most, even if she won't admit it. That made him a bit sad as well as happy as he sat on the dining table, and Kushina served the breakfast. "Ka-chan, where's Aniki?" asked Mito as she smiled at the thought of the sleeping blonde. "Well, looks like our lazy, little blonde has been playing outside in the morning. He is dead tired, so let him sleep in. I'll put the breakfast by his bedside, so that he can have it when he wakes up," she said, and Mito smiled and nodded as they finished the breakfast. Kushina walked up to his room and kept the tray on his desk as she sat on his bed and brought his head softly on her lap and brushed his hair as he snuggled in her embrace, making her smile. She rubbed his whiskers softly as he purred and leaned into her hand, making her giggle softly as she held him to her for a while, then laid his head back on the pillow and walked out after kissing his cheek softly, closing the door behind her. She walked down to see the twins already training with Jiraiya and called out to him. "Hey Jiraiya, can you take over their training for a while today?" she asked, and he grinned and nodded as she smiled and moved back upstairs. She hadn't been able to spend much time with the blonde joy she had and moved back to his room as she got beside him in his bed and leaned on an elbow and brushed his hair softly as he cuddled up to her in her chest while she smiled as she held her little blonde in her arms and kept brushing his hair softly. Naruto woke up to feel himself cuddled in something really warm and knew what it was immediately as he happily snuggled in his mother's arms as he yawned and cracked one of his eyes open to look up and see the smiling face of his mother. He rose up a bit to peck her cheek with a smile to snuggle in her arms once again. "So what has my little blonde been up to in the mornings to be so tired?" she asked teasingly, and he smiled a bit, remembering his success at unlocking his chakra, and said nothing as he held her tightly and she too hugged him back. "Why aren't you training Menma and Mito, Ka-chan?" he asked, and she smiled at him. "Jiraiya has taken over for a while, and I have to take care of my lazy prankster, do you know?" she said, and he grinned foxily and nodded as he sat up, and she brought the tray on her lap and fed him. He himself fed her and she ate, giggling as they spent some time together, and Naruto got up stretching a bit as he turned to her with a smile. "Arigato, Ka-chan, for spending time with me," he said softly, and she smiled and kissed the top of his head and hugged him. "I love spending time with my cute child now, don't I?" she teased, and he smiled and muttered a hi, hugging her happily. No matter what, he loved her the most. He let her go and looked at her with a smile. "You should go and see their training, Ka-chan. I'll be going out for a bit," he said, and she nodded as she left him alone with a smile. Now Naruto looked at the clock and saw that it was almost noon and wondered how he had slept so long. Then his mind turned back gears and his eyes widened. How the hell had he reached back home? The last thing he remembered was blacking out in the training fields. Then his eyes narrowed at the note under the clock and picked it up and opened it to find a familiar handwriting and read it. "You blacked out at the training fields from chakra exhaustion, and I brought you home out of everyone's eyesight. Meet me at my home when you wake up, we have some things to discuss. Tobirama Senju." He smiled as he tore the note apart and threw it in the dustbin. So the old man had figured out his secret training already. He smiled and walked down as he put on his sandals and saw the twins training with Jiraiya and Kushina and shouted, "I'm going," he shouted, and Kushina turned back and waved at him. "Alright, be careful and don't overdo anything, alright?" She shouted back and nodded, and moved out into the streets and towards the Senju clan compounds. Senju clan compounds. Naruto walked into Tobirama's home after his usual way of greeting and their occasional staring and sat down at his usual spot as Tobirama put some snack and tea in between them and sat down on the porch. "So your family hasn't been training you?" he stated more than asked, and Naruto nodded, already knowing he must have figured everything out by now. "Yes, I don't have the special chakra that my siblings have and they need the extra training more than me. Ka-chan told me to wait until she had trained them enough to start training me," he said, and Tobirama nodded at his answer. "Then why are you training by yourself? Why not wait for the academy or your mother to teach you?" he asked curiously, and Naruto smiled. "I don't want to be left behind. Everyone my age has started their training and I can't waste my time sitting around sleeping while everyone gets ahead of me. If I want to complete my dream of making my father proud and be as strong as him one day, each day wasted is a step farther from my dream," he said, and Tobirama nodded with a smile. "The kid had a heart of gold," he mused. "I have decided to train you and take you on as my apprentice," he stated stoically, and Naruto looked at him with eyes as wide as saucers and asked the one question that rang through his head. "Why?" he asked, and Tobirama smirked. "You have potential, the drive to train till you drop. You will be great if trained properly, and the neglection of your training will stunt your growth both physically and mentally. I will not let a child with potential as great as yours be stopped from growing, and I believe you will grow nicely under my tutelage," he said, and Naruto sat there stunned and shocked, not believing his words. "But I am not that special. You were the second Hokage, brother to the first, and trained the third, and I don't have anything that differentiates me from the others. My siblings have their special chakra and everyone loves them too. Why take me on as an apprentice?" he asked in disbelief, and Tobirama nodded. "Yes, but you do not know your potential the way I see it. Plus, you may be a bit lazy and different than the others, but you have something that no one has as strong as you do," he said, and Naruto looked at him curiously, and he continued. "You have a pure heart. You do not feel any animosity to your family for not training you. Instead, you are happy for them and accept it while training yourself. Your drive to become great is there, and you have the guts to face anything thrown at you with a smile until you drop. Those are the traits that make a great shinobi and a great man," he said, and Naruto looked at him stunned as he smiled at the boy and put his hand over his head. "So what do you say? Will you be my apprentice?" he asked, when a tear rolled down Naruto's eye, and he hugged the man tightly, making him smile as he rubbed his back, softly patting his head as Naruto spoke up. This was the first time someone had told him he had potential and accepted him for who he was. But the most important thing was he believed in him and his dream completely and was willing to help him get there. "Hi, I will be honored to be your apprentice, old man. I promise I'll make you proud," he said in his chest, and Tobirama smiled and nodded as he broke off the hug and stood up as he took the storage scroll from his hands and unsealed the hip pouch and leg holster and threw it at him as Naruto caught it, and Tobirama stood with his arms crossed and his face now completely stoic. "Then what the hell are you wasting time for? Get to training, we are wasting daylight," he said, and Naruto smirked and strapped the equipment on with a nod. "Hi, old man, let's go," he said, grinning, and Tobirama looked at him with narrowed eyes. "You should call me Tobirama Sensei from now on, you brat," he said stoically, and Naruto scoffed and waved his hand lazily. "As if, take a hike. You are a long way from getting me to call you anything other than old man. Now let's go and start our training," he said lazily, making Tobirama smirk as he followed the boy to the clearing. "Well, it was worth a try," he mused, shaking his head with an amused smile, and started their training on Shuriken Jutsu. Naruto walked to the range where the targets were and took out his shurikens and all the three-pronged kunes he had brought with him and threw them with a lot of force, and it went off target as a wooden fan made contact with his head with a slap, and he yelped. "Hey, what did you do that for?" he shouted indignantly, and Tobirama narrowed his eyes at the accusing blonde. "You have gone back to throwing that like a hippie, Now go again, and if you do not make the technique right there will be a lot of slap marks on your head," he said stoically, and Naruto glared at him as he stared at him blankly and after a moment grumbled and turned around, and threw it, bending his arm and using a bit too much force. Slap. Again, came the stoic voice of Tobirama as Naruto rubbed his head and took out another kunai, and this time straightened his arm and used a bit less force, but didn't flick his wrist as he awaited the blow, knowing his mistake. Slap. Rang the voice through the clearing as he glared at Tobirama, who stared at him blankly. Again, he said, and Naruto grumbled but pulled out another kunai and threw it at the target, this time using the correct technique, but saw he had overpowered it and the aim was way too off. Slap. He glared at the man as he pointed a finger at him accusingly. "Hey, I did everything right this time, what did you hit me for?" he asked, and Tobirama looked at him blankly, making him feel stupid. "You are using way too much strength. What are you, a bear? Throw it with elegance and precision, and let the results flow," he said as Naruto puffed his cheeks at the man. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he asked, glaring at him, and Tobirama looked at him stoically. "Yes. Now again," he said, and Naruto cursed the man under his breath and pulled out another kunai, and this time did everything almost correctly, but his aim was way too off as he waited for the slap to come, which never came. He turned to him surprised as he got a nod of approval. "Yes, this time you did the technique almost right, even though your aim is still way too off, but we'll get it in time. Now take out the shurikens and let's try those, and then you will work on your aim with the both of them. Now get to it," he said stoically, and Naruto scowled and took out some shurikens as he threw them with a straight arm, the same mistake as before. Slap. Again, came the stoic voice of Tobirama, and he sighed, rubbing his head. This was going to be a long day. Clang. 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 Slap. Clang. 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 Slap. Slap. Clang. Clang. Clang were the noises that rang throughout the clearing as Tobirama forced the correct techniques into his head, literally each time he made a mistake. As the sun was about to set in, our blonde hero laid sprawled on the ground, and Tobirama stood over him with an amused smile, but Naruto glared at him, too tired to point a finger at him. "Kami is watching you, she'll make you pay for being so violent on your humble student," he cursed the man, and Tobirama looked at him amused. "Then I guess if you have enough energy to curse me, then we can go few more rounds," he said, and Naruto looked at him with horrified look, making him chuckle at the boy's antics. "Alright, let's go inside and get you something to eat and freshen you up before you leave. Now get up and stop whining," he said stoically, walking away, and Naruto followed him, glaring daggers at the man's back, and he showered as Tobirama gave him some food and they ate in comfortable silence. He asked him to seal up his equipment, and Tobirama shook his head, making him confused. "You now have access to your chakra, just pump some chakra into the scroll and they will get sealed, and do the same for unsealing them too," he said, and Naruto nodded as he put the items on the scroll and pumped a hell lot of chakra, ripping the scroll as Tobirama stared at him blankly, and he stared right back. "You destroyed the scroll," he said stoically, and Naruto nodded. "That I did," he said lazily, and Tobirama nodded as he pulled out another storage scroll and sealed the equipment himself. "We will start working on your chakra control along with your shuriken jutsu from tomorrow. You have a tendency to put everything you have each time you use it," he said, earning a nod from Naruto. "Tomorrow, instead of going to the training grounds, come here. We will start working on it from tomorrow onwards." "When do you wake up?" he asked. "I wake up a couple hours before sunrise to read that scroll you gave me, and then get a couple of hours of training before having breakfast and then come to play with you," he said, and Tobirama nodded, respecting his determination. "From tomorrow, wake up at sunrise and read the scroll till breakfast, and then come here. There is no secret training from now on, and we don't need you to burn yourself out," he said, and Naruto nodded as he smiled at his new teacher. He stood up, pocketing the scroll, and walked out as he waved back at him lazily, and Tobirama waved at him back with a smile. Uzumaki Namikaze household. Naruto walked in as he saw his family still training and took out some juice and plopped himself on the table as he drank it, sighing in relief. The old man was one hell of a slave driver, he mused as he saw them come and laughing, and Kushina took a seat beside him and saw as Jiraiya told them of the cool hair jutsus that he had created and would teach them one day. He smiled at the excited faces of his siblings and watched them talk and joke as his mind wandered back to the old man. Even if he was strict, the old man was one hell of a teacher, and his improvement told him his ways worked. Even if they hurt like hell, and he could have sworn that he had heard him chuckle once when he wasn't looking. He saw them chatting about the day's training happily and wondered if he should tell his mother about the training he was doing with the old man. But what if she refused him, and then he wouldn't get to spend time with him? The only one who had showed that he believed in him and had potential like his siblings did. He would keep it a secret for now and tell her about it when she had finished training his siblings and moved on to him. Maybe she would be a bit angry, but he could handle her anger. He saw them laugh and play and moved to his room, telling them good night and kissing Kushina on the cheek as he let the exhaustion of the day take over. Next morning, Naruto woke up with a yawn as the sunlight hit his eyes. After that, he brushed his teeth and down to see Kushina working on the breakfast and smiled as he walked up to her and tugged on her dress as she looked down with a smile. "Ohio Ka-chan," he said softly, and she smiled and crouched down as she gave him a kiss, and he grinned foxily and sat down wondering where his siblings were. "Ka-chan, where are Menma and Mito?" he asked, and she giggled. "Oh, those two overdid their training yesterday and are going to sleep in. Jiraiya will come later on, so it's just the two of us for breakfast today," she said, and he smiled and nodded. "So what have you been up to these days, Naru-chan?" she asked as she sat down, and both dug into breakfast as he answered. "Nothing much, Ka-chan, I just play with a friend of mine," he said, and she smiled at him, looking curiously. He didn't have many friends with his loner personality, that she knew, so she was intrigued. "Who is this new friend of yours, Naru-chan?" she asked, and he wondered about whether to tell her the truth or not. "Oh, I just met him in the park one day, he's nice. Likes to do things my way," he said, and she smiled at his happy face and nodded as both ate in comfortable silence, and Naruto stood up as Kushina started working on her household chores. "Ka-chan, now I'll go, alright. I'll see you in the evening," he said, and she smiled and nodded, motioning for him to come near, and crouched down as she put some money in his pocket with a smile. "Take this new friend of yours to lunch today, my treat, alright?" she said, and he grinned and nodded, kissing her cheek, and ran out as she waved him off happily. He started walking on his way to the Senju compounds as he heard some commotion near the park's secluded area and wondered who it was so early in the morning. He decided to check it out since it was still pretty early anyways. He walked through the bushes and saw 3 boys, probably 10 or so, towering over a girl his age, and listened in. "So just because you are a Hyuga you think you are better than us?" one of them said, and the girl shook her head as she responded meekly. "And no," she said softly, and another one of them sneered. "Then what was that cousin of yours said?" he asked, and she looked down, fiddling with her shirt. "I don't think so, like that," she said meekly, and the third one smirked, gazing at her. "Then apologize. I hate all you freaky-eyed people anyways," he said as he pulled her up by the collar, and her eyes watered as she trembled. "I am sorry," she said softly, and they laughed at her as he shook her by the collar. "I didn't hear you, now apologize properly or else," he said as her bottom lip quivered, and she whispered another apology as he pulled his fist back to hit her when a heel collided with his face, and he dropped the girl and held his broken nose, crying. Naruto got up and shouldered the second in his stomach, making him bend over in surprise as Naruto landed an uppercut, breaking his nose too, and caught the girl's wrist as he pulled her behind his back and glared at them as the third watched his friends who were on the ground. "Why don't you pick on someone your own size, losers?" he asked, and the boy growled as they heard, the voice of some elder coming, and the boy picked up his two friends and ran away in fright as Naruto turned around as he saw the girl sobbing with her knees to her chest and crouched down with a lost look. Now how was he supposed to calm her down? He could calm Minato whenever she cried by giving her a hug and she immediately stopped crying, but he didn't know her, so she might get even more scared if he did that. So he did the only thing that came to his mind. He patted her head softly in a lame attempt to calm her down as she looked at him with teary eyes and sniffed. Arigato. She said softly, and he grinned foxily, and gave her a thumbs up. It's all right. I got the drop on them, otherwise, they would have beaten me to near death. He said lazily, and she looked at him wide-eyed. Weren't you scared? She sniffled, and he smiled lazily and waved his hand dismissively, making the girl tilt her head to the side quite cutely in his opinion. Nah, I would have bailed you out anyways. I'm good at escaping, you know. These idiots aren't as fast as my angry cat-chan when I prank her. He said, and she giggled softly, making him smile. So why were they troubling you anyways? I don't think a cute girl like you could do anything to them. He said, and the girl blushed a bit as she heard him call her cute and sniffed as he handed her a handkerchief and she wiped her tears away. And no, my cousin told T them something bad, and they were making fun of my eyes too. She said softly, and now he was confused. Why would they make fun of your eyes? He asked, and she looked at him curiously. Everyone made fun of their eyes, saying they were weird, especially her. Because they are weird. She said softly, and he smiled at her and shook his head. Nah, they are really pretty. And that lavender tint in your eyes makes it look like pearls that my cat-chan showed me. I wish I had such pretty eyes. He said in thought, putting his finger to his chin, and imagined himself as a Hyuga. Then thought he would look like a ghost, or something with blonde hair and those eyes contrasting them, and shuddered as the girl giggled, seeing his mortified look. She couldn't understand him at all. One moment he was lazy, extremely brave, smart, and funny, and now a bit stupid as she saw him shake off the vision. He was the first one outside her clan who hadn't called her weird, and on top of that had told her she and her eyes were pretty. Then she remembered she had seen him at the party she went to with her father, where he had told her to befriend his siblings, but she couldn't as everyone pushed her away. And now she was curious about him. Ano, what's your name? She asked softly, and he smiled at the girl and held his hand out for her to shake. Naruto Namikaze. It's a pleasure to meet you, he said, and she shook his hand softly with a smile. Hinata Hyuga. She said, and he smiled and nodded as he wondered what she was doing here of all places in the morning. Say, Hinata-chan, what are you doing here all by your own in the morning? He asked, and she smiled and pointed to the flower garden, and he looked at her curiously. I come here in the morning to collect flowers. I press them and collect them, it's my hobby, she said meekly, and he smiled and nodded. Then he heard a man shout her name as he looked behind her to see a man with those same eyes come and looked at him coldly as he just gave him a lazy smile, and he turned to Hinata. Hinata-sama, there you are. Are you all right? He asked, and she nodded with a small smile. Why yes, Naruto here saved me from bullies. He's are really nice, she said softly, and he looked at him stunned. The demon brat had saved her. He looked at him startled, and gave a curt nod of thanks as Naruto just cleaned his ear lazily, making him twitch at his laziness. He decided to thank him properly since he had helped the girl he was supposed to watch out for. Arigato Namikaze-san, your help is much appreciated, he said stoically, and Naruto waved him off lazily. Nah, it was nothing. I'll see you later, Hinata-chan, he asked, and she nodded, twiddling with her fingers. Hi. Arigato, she said softly, and he smiled and nodded as he walked off, and she stared at his walking back with a small smile as she and Ko returned to the Hyuga compounds. Senju clan compounds. Naruto walked up to the door, Tobirama's door, and knocked. A minute later the door was opened by Tobirama, crossing his arms as he looked at him stoically, making him smile lazily at the man. Yo, he said, waving his hand as he stared at him as he stared right back for a few moments. You're late, he said stoically, and Naruto yawned a bit and rubbed the back of his head lazily, giving him a nod making him twitch. Why? He asked stoically, and Naruto smiled, thinking of the cute and soft-spoken girl he had met earlier in the morning. Nothing much, just got lost on the path of life, he said lazily with a small yawn, and Tobirama's eye twitched at his stupid and nonchalant excuse that, he said with such an expression that it was the truest thing in the world. Seriously, that's the best excuse you could come up with? He asked, and Naruto smiled at the man. Hey, you don't know, but that road is really long and has a lot off. He started explaining, and Tobirama face-palmed and stood aside, motioning for him to come in. In a certain bookstore, a lazy jounin sneezed, then shrugged it off as he picked up the newest edition of Icha Icha Tactics with a perverse giggle. Tobirama smiled a bit as he saw the boy going straight to the clearing and stood in front of him and nodded. Alright, now let's get started on your chakra control exercises. We'll start with the leaf balancing exercise. You've got to stick a leaf on your forehead with chakra, he said, and Naruto looked at him curiously. Tobirama sat down in a lotus position with him doing the same as he concentrated chakra to his forehead, and it stuck as he motioned for him to do the same. Alright, now focus your chakra on the leaf and try and stick it there. Too much and it blows off, and too little makes it slip, so let's go, he said, and Naruto nodded as he put the leaf to his forehead and focused chakra as it blew off, and his sweat dropped. Looks like he used too much, he mused, and decided to go on again. It went on like that until noon as he either blew it off or let it slip, and Tobirama stopped him. Alright, that's enough for today. Let's continue with your Shuriken Jutsu, and then we'll play some shogi to rest and eat, he said, and Naruto nodded as he went on with their training. When they finished their shogi match, Naruto left the compounds with a smile as he walked to his home. Uzumaki Namikaze household. Naruto walked in and saw his siblings sitting in the lotus position and holding a ram hand seal, and sat down on the porch as watched curiously what they were up to. Come on, Mito, Menma, we have been at it for the past 3 days. With the amount of chakra the two of you have, it shouldn't be a problem to unlock it. Just focus and stay still, Naruto said, making Drea whine, and he stifled a giggle at the looks of disgust from the patients. The thing required as Menma and Mito threw annoyed looks at him, and he smiled at him lazily. If you think it's so easy, then why don't you try it, lazy bum? Oh wait, you aren't training yet, said Mito as the frustration got the better of her, and Naruto looked down in sadness at her words and walked away without saying a thing. Realizing what she said, she saddened at her words had said now as Kushina looked at her angrily. Mito, how dare you belittle your brother? You know the only reason he gave up his training was for you, and do you realize how it must have hurt him to hear that? Don't take the frustrations out on someone else, she scolded angrily as Mito looked down. I'm sorry, Kaa-chan, it's just that She was cut off as Kushina spoke up. Go and apologize now, she said sternly, and Mito nodded as she went inside and saw her brother taking out a juice from the fridge as she fiddled with her feet a little and spoke up. Aniki, I'm sorry that She was cut off as Naruto spoke up. It's alright, Mito, I understand. I didn't mind, you are my little sister after all, he said as he patted her head lazily, and she smiled and hugged him happily, making Naruto hug her back as he watched her walk away and back to her training. Then he noticed Kushina glancing at him worriedly and gave her a smile and a nod, making her smile back. Those words hurt him, but he knew she was just a bit frustrated, and let it slip into the back of his mind as he sat silently watching them train and fail at unlocking their chakra, and came back in as they sat at the table. Kushina, these two have really little patience, and it has been 3 days already, Drea said, and she nodded as Naruto looked at his sad siblings and glared at the pervert. They'll do it. It is just taking them a little time, that's all. You'll see, he said lazily, making his siblings and Kushina look up at him with a smile and nodded as Menma and Mito spoke in unison. Yeah, tomorrow we'll do it no matter what happens. Both said in unison, and he smiled as Kushina giggled at their claim, and they started talking about some of the day's things and what they needed to improve on. As he tuned them out, not understanding anything, and thought back to the soft-spoken girl he saw earlier in the morning. Maybe he'll meet her again someday, he mused with a small smile, and maybe she would be his friend like he always wanted. Kushina saw him spacing out and not really interested in the conversation after a while, and was about to speak up as he stood up and started to leave to his room, putting back his dishes. "I'll see you all tomorrow, good night," he said, waving a hand at them from his back, and walked up as Kushina watched him go, sadly that she hadn't even talked to him today, but thought he must be just tired, and continued chatting away, forgetting the small matter. Chapter 7. Time skip 1 year. Senju clan compounds. Pant pant. Pant pant pant. The sounds of harsh and erratic breathing could be heard all around the training fields in Tobirama's personal training grounds. The man himself stood stoically, watching the kneeling and panting boy in front of him. His gaze was stoic, yet a feeling of pride emanated from him when he gazed at the small drops falling from his shadowed face. "Is that it?" he asked the boy stoically, crossing his arms while the boy caught his breath. "I expected more," he said in a tone of mock taunt and disappointment, making the boy's fiery eyes turn to him in a full-blown glare. He smirked inwardly when he saw those defiant orbs refusing to give in. "Yes, that's it, Naruto. Show me what you have buried deep within you. I know your potential is locked and hidden, show it to me," he thought when he saw the boy get up on shaky legs with his right arm hanging limply to the side. "Damn it. I should have dodged that kick instead of blocking it," he whispered in annoyance, rubbing his sore arm, and wiped his face from the dirt over it to look at him angrily. "He isn't even out of breath," he thought angrily, seeing the completely calm and stoic face of his master. Damn, the man pushed hard when he put those old bones to use, he thought. "We are just getting started, old man. I'll show you what I can do," he stated confidently, causing the stoic man's eyebrow to raise up in amusement. "Really?" he asked incredulously, making the boy's eyes to narrow in on him. "We have been at it for 2 hours already. You haven't touched me while I have run you into the ground each time. You can barely stand, and your right arm hurts from what I can see," he said while Naruto cursed inwardly at showing his weakness. He was right. Even after the year of brutal training and conditioning, he was being run into the ground while Tobirama didn't even take a breath out of place. "A shinobi must know his limits, Naruto, for one must retreat and live to fight another day, rather than staying defiant to the end and dying," he said in his wise tone, making Naruto clench his knuckles tightly. "What will you do now, Naruto?" thought Tobirama as he watched his pupil inquisitively. Would he take the smart choice and give in, or? His thoughts trailed off when Naruto shot towards him with a small burst of chakra into his feet, cracking the ground behind him. Tobirama was caught off guard at his ingenious use of chakra to enhance his speed and take him on. A smirk graced his lips when he saw those determined eyes ignoring every pain in his muscles and launch at him with everything he had. "Now it's time to get serious," he thought for the first time, uncrossing his arms and slipping into his defensive, Senju-style stance, readying himself for the final spar. Naruto saw it and knew it would be the last chance he got, since the man was now taking him seriously and was done fooling around. Tobirama ready to block his punch when he saw his fist tightening, but was shocked when Naruto punched the ground with a burst of chakra and jumped up like a springe trap. He twisted himself with extreme agility in mid-air and launched a roundhouse kick at his head. His heel headed straight for his temple to give him a knockout blow, but Tobirama merely smirked. "Impressive," he mused, bringing his arms up in a traditional cross-arm block, and the heel made contact with it harmlessly. "You've got to do better, that Naruto," he trailed off when he saw his smirk and the mischievous glint in his eyes. His eyes widened when he saw his other heel coming through the weakest point in his guard from the side towards his other temple, and caught his previous kick with his left arm, and blocked the incoming blow with his right. He smirked when he saw his well-planned attack failing, but had to give the boy credit for it when he saw him falling to the ground. It would have caught any kid, his age or even a few years older, completely off guard. but he had the battle-hardened instincts of nearly 5 decades in combat. There was no way. His thoughts trailed off when he saw Naruto landing both his palms on the ground and sprinched himself back to Tobirama's face. His both feet soles coming for Tobirama's chin, and he barely leaned back to see them breeze past his face unharmed due to his instincts, and kicked the boy in his chest, launching back while skidding back himself. He was surprised when he realized that the first attack, along with the second one, were merely distractions. The third was the main attack, and he had nearly gotten him due to him taking the boy lightly. But how did the boy have the instincts to pull off an instantaneous attack like that, all the while calculating his each and every move in midair? That was hard even for seasoned chunins. His thoughts trailed off when he saw the wobbly Naruto standing up and looking at him with a smirk. But what shocked him to his core were his eyes. They weren't the usual cerulean blue pools. Each eye held a single tomo, with the scarlet red accentuating them now. Sharingan, he whispered in amazement as he was in the rarest moment at a loss for words. The boy had done a feat that not even pure Ukkas were capable of. He had beaten the record of the previous Uchiha prodigy by 2 years. And he wasn't even in the academy for now. So that was how he was able to pull that combo off. "I've got you this time, old man." He heard the voice of the blonde breaking him out of his stupor. He was confused but grazed the back of his hand on his lip to see it bleeding slightly. His last attack had grazed him? He watched Naruto giggling and pointing at him happily, completely unaware of his eyes, and Tobirama couldn't help but let out a wholehearted chuckle himself. Both laughed hilariously at the moment, both wondering why they were laughing but just couldn't find the reason. It just felt right. He saw Naruto flail left and right slightly when his eyes became half-lidded and rolled to the back of his head. Tobirama was in front of him in a blur when he started falling face first to the ground and picked the boy up in his arms. "I've got you, old man. You've got to pay for my deluxe bowl now," he whispered in his half-conscious state before falling unconscious, and Tobirama couldn't help but chuckle and shake his head. The boy just never ceased to amaze him. His eyes darted onto a small patch of bushes between the large trees that were his closest link to his now deceased elder brother. "You can come out now, you know," he spoke in amusement when he heard a small and soft eep as he watched a small 6-year-old girl come out of the bushes. He looked at the little girl curiously, already having figured it was a small child from his senses and the way she was hiding herself in the bushes so close to them. No one was stupid enough to spy on him like that, and that too in his own house. He saw the girl with her neck-length, hime-cut indigo hair. His eyes looked at her own, and he was surprised to see the pupil-less eyes of the signature Kekkei Genkai of the Hyuga clan. A Hyuga? And her forehead is clean too. That means she is of the main branch. And if my guess is right, she is the heiress to the clan, no less. He thought when he saw the girl stand in front of him, finding the plain grass quite interesting to stare at, while fiddling with her elegant white kimono silk. He was quite curious as to the girl's behavior. It was quite un-Hyuga-like. The Hyuga clan always prided themselves as one of the noble clans of the village and would never look down or not meet someone's eyes. Their pride, instilled from childhood by their clan, would not allow them to do so, especially the main branch. He mused when he saw the shy girl. He smiled at the girl and crouched down to her eye level, putting his hand on her head to make her wide eyes stare at him in surprise and nervousness when he heard her speak. "Oh no, I didn't mean to spy. I just wanted to meet Naruto-kun, but..." She stuttered out with a small pink dust ever present on her cheeks, making him quite surprised. First of all, from her timid and shy personality, the exact opposite of the Hyugas to her calling Naruto so affectionately. He didn't know his pupil had any friends his age, much less had caught the eye of the heiress to the Hyuga clan. "You know Naruto?" he asked curiously, rubbing her head to calm down her nervousness, and she smiled a small smile, giving a small meek nod. Hi, he saved me from bullies in the park. He's really nice." She spoke softly, making him quite surprised yet proud. He saw her looking at Naruto worriedly while poking her fingers in a cute nervous tick, making his smile widen at the concern her soft eyes held in them. "He's alright. A shower, some food and a nap will make him bounce up like a spring again." he said, surprising her that he had read her question, and she nodded with a smile. What's your name, girl? He asked in curiosity, making her eyes tear away from the unconscious boy and look at him in a small, respectful gaze while bowing politely. Hinata Hyuga. She said politely, making him smile and nod. So he was right. She was the heiress, but what made him happy was that she looked at the boy for who he was instead of the elder's discrimination. Tobirama Senju. He introduced himself and she smiled and nodded at his introduction. He rose an eyebrow when she fiddled with the sleeve of her kimono and took out a small bottle of some kind of balm and held it out to him. He looked at her questionably while taking it. It's a healing ointment my cat-chan used to make. Please give it to Naruto-kun. She said softly, making him smile and nod at the cute girl. He was glad there was someone his age who looked at the boy with such concern. The next generation was growing up nicely, he thought, but asked a question that had been bothering him. Why are you here all alone, Hinata? He asked, and she looked down while poking her fingers like earlier shyly. Well, Ko doesn't want me to meet Naruto-kun, so I. She trailed off, making Tobirama smile in amusement. Gave him a slip? He asked amusedly, getting a small nod from the girl, and chuckled. She had given a slip to the bodyguard supposed to look after her, and a Hyuga no less. She must have some stealth skills to pull that off, he mused, and stood up while walking in. Come on in, Hinata, let's have some tea and snacks. He spoke stoically and walked in while she followed him in. He laid him down on the couch and saw her sitting by his side while peeking shy glances at him every now and then. He smiled at his student laying there in a calm slumber happily. To think he has caught the eye of the Hyuga heiress. He really does have the devil's luck. He thought, pouring the tea in 3 cups and cookies by the side while walking in the living room. He put it on the table and took his cup and a cookie while motioning her to dig in. He saw her looking at her confused when she gazed at the 3rd steaming cup, making him smile. He turned his gaze to the sleeping boy and finished up his cookie to make his hand free and held a half-rammed seal. Hinata watched in amazement when a small glob of water formed out of thin air and hovered over. Her eyes widened when the water splashed down and woke Naruto up with a startle. Damn you, old man. Do you have to wake me up like that every? He trailed off his rant when he wiped his face to look at the girl by his side, looking at him with wide eyes and shell-shocked face. Hina-chan? He asked in a confused voice, making her blush at the nickname. He called her within when he gave her a small lazy smile and waved at her lazily. Yo? What are you doing here? He asked curiously, making her look down on something interesting on her empty lap and poke her fingers cutely. I came to meet you. She whispered shyly. Tobirama heard it, but Naruto cleaned his ears and scooted closer to the soft-spoken girl for a better sound. Can you repeat that, Hina-chan? My ears had some water in them. He spoke, giving a glare at his innocently munching master, and smiled at the girl, who still wasn't looking at him. I wanted to meet you. She spoke a bit louder yet in her soft voice, and he nodded with a smile, pulling her in a one-armed innocent hug. I'm glad you did. So how have you been, Hina-chan? Those boys didn't give you any trouble again, did they? He asked, making her smile while leaning in his hug a bit to take in and savor the moment fully. Tobirama, though, saw the pure adoration in her eyes that the blonde was completely oblivious of when she was leaning down in his embrace. No, they didn't show up again, she said shyly, and he gave her a foxy grin and nodded, picking up a cookie for his empty stomach and munched on it happily, all the while oblivious of the admiring pearls transfixed on him from the side. Tobirama just watched on silently as to the two's amusing interaction and just relished as a spectator to it all for now. His gaze landed on the healing ointment she had brought, and a light bulb went on in his head. So Hinata, why don't you give him the ointment you brought for Naruto? He asked stoically, making Naruto's curious eyes fix on the embarrassed and blushing girl. She picked it up and held it out for him, which he took with a lazy smile and opened it up instantly. She saw him sniffing it, and his eyes lit up, much to her surprise. So that's why you were picking up those flowers that morning? He said with a snap of his fingers, making her nod and smile. I pressed them too. she said softly and looked at his appreciative gaze and nod, making her feel warm and happy that he liked her hobby. It sounds fun, he said, making Tobirama smile. Pretty simple and not too much work, it's great, Hina-chan, he said happily when the man facepalmed. It was his same lazy pupil, all right. But he saw the girl still happy and smiling as she listened on him, berating him for his brutal spars every now and then. So are you joining the academy next week, too, Hina-chan? He asked curiously, and she nodded, looking at him expectantly. She was met with his patented foxy grin and a thumbs up, making her cheeks turn pink. I hope we are in the same class then, he said happily, and she nodded. Me too. She spoke softly, and she heard him list on how elated her was for the academy and the cool things he was going to learn there. Tobirama knew how excited the boy was to finally go down to the academy and start learning new things, and smiled at his enthusiasm. At least he would have one friend there, he mused, looking at the girl, listening to his every word intently and letting out a cute giggle in between. Tobirama heard a knock on his door and wondered who it was leaving to see while the kids chatted away happily. He came to the door to see a Hyuga wearing a bandana and looking at him pleadingly. Tobirama-sama, he spoke with a bow while he gave a curt nod of acknowledgement. Have you seen Hinata-sama? I mean a 6-year-old girl with small hair. He trailed off, seeing Tobirama raise his hand and motioning for him to come in. He didn't have the courage to argue with the stoic man and walked inside towards the living room and saw Hinata there sitting with the demon brat, he thought with a scowl as he watched their happy interactions. Tobirama saw it and put a hand over his shoulder to gain his attention. Is there a problem? He asked sternly, making the Hyuga gulp and shake his head at his narrow black eyes and sighed in relief when Tobirama took his seat back and turned to the girl, who was still too engrossed in her conversation with the boy. Hinata-sama, there you are, you shouldn't run away like that, he said in a half-scolding voice, surprising her, and she nodded apologetically and stood up when she saw how late it was. I am sorry for the inconvenience, Tobirama-sama, she said softly, making the man smile and shake his hand dismissively. It was no problem, you are free to visit any time. This silent house feels nice with some happy voices every now and then, he said warmly, making her smile and nod, turning to the lazy blonde who was looking at her with a smile. She poked her fingers and looked down. I'll see you at the academy then, Naruto-kun, she spoke hesitantly, getting a happy nod from the blonde. Hi, I'll see you there, Hina-chan, don't worry, he said with a thumbs up, making her smile and nod. Ko was surprised at their familiar interactions and was happy to see the smile that lit up his charge's face when she saw his grin. Even if it was with him, he thought in disgust, and gave a bow to the stoic Senju. We'll be taking our leave then, Tobirama-sama, he said, getting a nod from the Senju, and Naruto watched them leave sadly at seeing his first friend accept Tobirama go. He felt a hand on top of his head and turned back to see the tall Senju standing behind with a smile. Don't worry, you'll see her at the academy soon, he said confidently, making Naruto grin foxily and nod. But then realization dawned on Naruto that it had been a year already, and now he had to join the academy and maybe join his training with his mother. He wanted to train with her, but he still liked the old man as his sensei more. Sensei, he said, looking down, making Tobirama quite surprised at his words. He had never called him sensei before and saw the nervous look of the blonde. He crouched down in front of him and gazed into his eyes warmly. What's the matter, Naruto? He asked in a grandfatherly tone, making the boy smile and launch himself in the man's arms. Tobirama caught him with a small chuckle as he hugged him warmly and patted his back. Arigato. He heard the boy speak and rubbed his back softly while closing his eyes. He had grown too much attached to the boy over the past year, and their bond had only strengthened. He wondered if this was what it felt like to have a son and to nurture him into the man he would become one day. You don't have to thank me, Naruto, he said warmly, making the boy snuggle in his embrace happily. Naruto himself had started seeing him as a father figure and turned to him for almost everything he wanted to learn over the year. and the man always welcomed his curiosities with open arms. "Sensei, please, I want to ask you something," he said, making Tobirama look into his pleading eyes to see the seriousness they held, and nodded. "I want to keep training with you," he said, surprising Tobirama. He knew the boy wanted to start his training with his mother, and with the academy his time would be cut too short. But if he wanted to train with him then what about your mother Naruto? He asked in a concerned tone, seeing the slight hesitance in his eyes before they became the usual fiery blues again. "I don't want to stop training with you. Please, if you would have me as your student," he asked while giving a polite bow, again shocking the stoic Senju. He had no qualms with it whatsoever and was looking at taking him on as an apprentice when he cleared his academy, since he had already honed his basics up to par with his standards, but this was all the more better. He put a hand on his shoulder, making his wide baby blue eyes turn to the white-haired man, who smiled and nodded. "All right, Naruto, if that is what you want, then I'll take you into my full-time apprentice. But we will have to tell your family about this." He was cut off when he was enveloped in another happy hug by the blonde and chuckled happily. He couldn't believe the old man had agreed to it. Now he could train with him all the time. He had learned so much from him over the year, and he loved his company and the way he taught things, not stopping until he had done to his critical eye standards. "All right then, Naruto, let's go and talk to your mother about this, all right? We have to tell her now, she deserves to know," he said seriously, and Naruto nodded, wiping his eyes off the unshed happy tears, and walked towards the door, pulling the Senju with him. "Then what are you waiting for, old man? Let's go," he said excitedly, making the stoic Senju chuckle and follow the blonde towards his house. Uzumaki Namikaze households. Kushina sat on her dining table with a tired sigh. It had been a year since she had started training the kids, and she couldn't help but feel her kids were going at a good pace now. They still hadn't tapped into the demonic chakra to get used to it in the slightest, but she didn't expect them to after she had seen their utter lack of patience. Her thoughts turned to her favorite blonde Baka and smiled happily. She had seen the blonde become so happy over the past year and was sad at not being able to spend too much time with him. But the twins' training was important too. But now she would start training the boy as she had promised. "Hey Kushina." She heard Drea's voice and turned to the man questionably at seeing his tired face too. No doubt from training the hyperactive kids all day long. "The kids haven't really progressed as much as I had hoped for," he said, getting a harsh glare from the red-haired mother at his berating her kids' efforts. "What do you mean?" she asked icily, making him wince and hold his hands up defensively. "Hey, now I don't mean it like that, just that they haven't tapped into any of the demonic chakra yet, and you have seen how slow they are picking things up. I mean, they haven't even perfected their taijutsu stance or their aim over the past year, let alone bring up their chakra control up to par," he said, making her fall silent at his summarizing their skills. She couldn't help but agree with it. They were a bit slow, but they would catch up in time, she hoped. "Yeah, but they worked hard." She was cut off by Drea. "But now they have the academy with their time cut short, and you are also considering cutting your time with Naruto." He was cut off when she leaked her killing intent at him, making him fall silent. "If I've told you once, I've told you 100 times. I promised Naru-chan he would start training with us this year, and I don't care what you or anyone else says, but I intend to keep it," she said firmly, making him try and convince her otherwise. "But Kushina." He tried and reasoned with her the importance of their training when they heard a knock on the door, and Kushina stood up to answer it. She opened the door and was surprised to see Tobirama Senju standing there with her. "Naru-chan, what happened to you?" she asked, instantly glimpsing him in a bear hug, much to his embarrassment when she saw his torn clothes and battered condition. Tobirama remembered the boy didn't even give him a chance to change his clothes or clean up his wounds and had dragged him here instantly. Her motherly instincts kicked in when she started coddling him in her hands and look at him frantically for wounds. "Did you get into a fight? Or did you play a prank? How many times have I told you to be careful?" she ranted on while wiping his face and clothes, ignoring his protests completely. Naruto, seeing she had gone into her mother mode, instantly leaned in and pecked her cheek softly and rubbed it with his hand, making her fall silent and look at him innocently. "Ka-chan, I'm fine. Me and the old man just went a little too far in our spar," he said softly in his angelic voice to calm her down, when she remembered the Senju, standing there, and nodded at him respectfully while he nodded back. She turned her gaze back to her blonde boy while cupping his cheeks. "Spar? What spar, Naru-chan? Are you hiding something from me?" she asked worriedly, making Naruto look a bit guilty, and Tobirama decided to cut in. "Kushina," he said, making her violet eyes turn to him. "Let's talk inside. We have much to discuss," he said seriously, and she nodded, picking up her blonde boy in her arms, who snuggled in her embrace happily and kissed her neck, making her smile. She brushed his silky hair softly while walking in, and Tobirama smiled at the love he saw in her eyes. She sat on the couch, pulling the blonde on her lap, and opened up her first aid kit, starting to clean his small scratches and wounds. Tobirama took a seat and smiled as he saw the red-haired woman fuss over how careless he was and how he always kept her on her toes with his silly pranks. She put on the final bandage on his cheek and kissed it softly while giving him a smile. Her eyes turned to the Senju, who was just watching the mother-son interaction with a fond smile. "Tobirama-sama, what has my little prankster done this time?" she asked while giggling at his indignant shout and hugging him tightly. His eyes turned serious, and he nodded stoically when Jiraiya took his seat and nodded at the man respectfully while getting no response from him back, and let out a sigh. "Kushina, Naruto has been training in the shinobi arts over the past 1 year," he said, making both her and Jiraiya's eyes to widen to Naruto, who was hiding in her neck completely. She brushed his hair worriedly, thinking he might have done something dangerous and stupid, when he continued. "With me," he said, shocking the two to their cores. She looked at him in disbelief while Jiraiya had his jaw dropped. The Tobirama Senju had taken him and trained him for a year after receiving countless offers to take on a student. Kushina let out a sigh of relief and brought her boy's face in front of her with a stern yet soft gaze. "Naru-chan, what is going on? Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly, making him look down a bit ashamed when Tobirama spoke up, seeing his hesitance. "He was worried, Kushina, that you might stop him from training with me after you refused him training while starting with his siblings." He spoke stoically, making guilt and regret wash over her. She hadn't realized it had that much of an effect over her baby boy. "Naru-chan, look at me," she spoke softly, making his shimmering eyes gaze into hers, and let out a small cute sniff. "You should have told me, Naru-chan. I wouldn't have stopped you if it was Tobirama Oji-san taking you under his wing. And if you wanted to train so badly, why didn't you say so earlier, my baby?" she asked softly, wiping those shimmering eyes with her gentle lips, looking at those childlike eyes with a small smile. "I didn't want you to think I was jealous or something. But he sobbed and started crying when she hugged her boy tightly in her arms. "Shh, there, my strong little prankster shouldn't cry," she cooed and rubbed the back of the sobbing boy, placing soft kisses all over him. Naruto giggled when he felt her lips roaming ticklishly all over him and forgot all about crying. "Ka-chan. Stop it, it tickles," he said in giggles and small hiccups, making her giggle herself. Tobirama smiled as he watched Kushina console her son. He was worried about the gap they were creating in between them, and now it was finally filled like he had planned to do from the start. He watched the mother and son embrace each other, and how Naruto was cuddled up in her arms with his bright smile. "So how has his training gone, Oji-san?" asked Kushina, brushing his hair softly when he fell asleep in her arms, and she just kept rocking him to lull him into a deep sleep. Tobirama smiled in pride at her question and answered. "His body has been conditioned to handle low genin level speeds. He always was an agile and quick child, so I focused completely on that one aspect instead of brute strength," he said, getting a nod from her. She herself had always had trouble keeping him in control in her house with his quick wits and maneuverings. His chakra control is nice too. He has mastered the leaf balancing and the tree walking exercises, though the latter still needs some work. he said, surprising the other two adults in the room. Drea couldn't help but take a glance at the peacefully sleeping blonde in Kushina's arms. The tree walking was a genin level exercise and his siblings hadn't even completed the leaf balancing to a respectable level yet. But the most improvement he has shown must be in his shuriken jutsu training, he said, again surprising them. It was the weakest subject when it came to Menma and Mito, but to think he had the most skill in that branch was quite surprising. How much has he progressed? Asked surprisingly Drea in curiosity. Well, his aim is now perfect with single projectiles, but multiple ones are still a ways away. I have started combining them with ninja wires and taught him some simple exercises in ninja wire manipulation. He has taken quite a liking to it too, especially the trap-making skills it help him with, he said, making Kushina giggle. Well, he always was a prankster at heart, she said in giggles, but couldn't help be proud of how far he had come. She was saddened that he hadn't taken his first steps in the arts with her, but she was still happy for her boy. So that was why he was so injured today. She realized what he had meant by spar earlier, getting a nod from Tobirama. That thought made him smile, even wider in pride. Yes, today I wanted to see how far he had come, so I told him to go all out and try and land one blow on me. He went on it for 2 hours straight, he said, surprising Drea and Kushina too. Well, he was lazy, but really he went at it for 2 hours straight? Asked Drea in suspicion at his words, making him narrow his eyes at the pervert. Was he doubting his teaching skills? He had trained his teacher the Sandime too. No, Drea, when he sets his mind on something, Naru-chan won't ever quit. I know that about him, said Kushina, kissing the sleeping boy's lips in a small chaste kiss, making him snuggle in her stomach. Tobirama nodded with a proud smile. She was a good mother indeed to know and love her child so much, even if she had made some small mistakes. But no one was perfect and no harm was done. Indeed, she is right, and to top it all, if he really did land a small graze on me in the spar today. He really is unpredictable, he said, surprising the two yet again. To think he had caught Tobirama off guard was surprising. Tobirama still had that brilliant maneuver etched in his memory and looked at the sleeping child in pride. But a small smile with a hint of sadness came upon Kushina's face. How did you decide to train him, Oji-san? You said you would never take on another student again, asked Kushina, making him smile fondly at another memory when he had first seen the boy train himself till his hands couldn't hold a weapon anymore. The drive, the pure determination those eyes held had drawn him into the boy. It was the day after his birthday when you had refused his training, Kushina, he said, making her look down in a bit of regret, but smiled when she saw his warm smile, telling her it wasn't a fault to blame herself for anymore. He had gotten his first set of kunai and shurikens from me, so he went to the abandoned Senju training ground and practiced till his hands couldn't hold another weapon anymore. He doesn't know I was watching, but I decided then and there I would take him on as my student, he said warmly, making her smile and rub the head of her child fondly. He seemed really attached to her baby boy, but his personality was magnetic if one got to know him closely. Tobirama saw the sun had gone down completely and it was dark. He stood up, surprising the two, and nodded at them curtly. It is getting late, I must get going, he said stoically, making the two realize how late it was and nod. Drea left through the sliding glass door of the garden, making Tobirama look at the man going, and turned to see Kushina standing up with Naruto in her arms while his head rested on her shoulders and his arms around her neck. She started walking up the stairs towards his room and was surprised when she heard the door open and Tobirama stepped in with his Hokage face on when he clicked the door close. Oji-san, is there something you want? She asked in a confused voice, and he nodded, crossing his arms. There is something really important I needed to tell you, but not in front of the pervert, he said, making her nod at his serious voice. Today there was a reason Naruto was able to catch me off guard, Kushina. He himself doesn't know the very reason he was able to pull off such a smooth maneuver on battle-honed instincts alone that most chunin would have trouble in, he said, surprising her, but she remained silent and listened on curtly. He has awakened the Sharingan, Kushina. he said, making her eyes widen in shock. Tobirama saw her purse her lips and nod without a voice of question, making him realize what he suspected. So you knew of Minato's parentage then? He asked, getting a nod from the woman who sat down by his head and brushed his golden locks gently. Hi, Minato-kun told me everything. He never revealed it to the village, for his father's enemies were too much, within and outside the village, and always kept his own eyes under a permanent camouflage seal. I suspected why he chose Naruto for the greatest burden of the three, but I never imagined he would awaken it so soon. She whispered, making Tobirama nod. I hadn't thought of that either. I thought maybe he had a few years before something would trigger them, but the Uchiha genes flow strong in him. He is the youngest ever to awaken the Sharingan at only 6. He said with a hint of pride, making Kushina smile too. I don't want anyone to know it yet. If anyone knows he has the Sharingan along with the Namikaze name and my Uzumaki parentage, they would stop at nothing to dissuade my child into some political matters or assassination attempts. She whispered, and Tobirama nodded silently, figuring it himself. Don't worry about it, Kushina. I'll talk to him about everything and we'll keep it to ourselves until he is ready. I have had Kagami as my subordinate and know all the intricacies of those eyes with my experience with them in combat. I'll hone his skills to perfection and make him ready for anything to come at him, he said, making her smile. She stood up and looked at him with a small scared smile. Take care of him. He is lazy sometimes, but he is really kind, even if he does some pranks. I didn't realize I was pushing him away or he was hurting, or I would have. Her babbling was cut off as Tobirama pulled her in a hug. She cried in his chest and clutched her Oji-san tightly. Child, no harm was done. I'll make him the best there is and he'll do just fine. He loves you more than anything in this world. I haven't seen a child adore his mother more than he does for you, he assured her, and she nodded and broke off the hug with a sniffle. He patted her head like he used to do when she was little, and she smiled in embarrassment at how small she felt at his tender gesture. Alright, I leave his training to you, Oji-san, but if you need any help or anything, I can do for him. She trailed off, seeing his amused smile, and stood silently. I will, he said, surprising her, and walked out while she slid into Naruto's blanket and brought him in her arms while he snuggled in his mother's warm arms happily. Chapter 8. Time skip 1 week later. The Uzumaki Namikaze households were as lively as they always were. Naruto, don't you dare, was the shout of a certain red-haired mother chasing her blonde-haired boy all over the house. Come on, Ka-chan, it's not like you drink it anyways, I'll just try a little, shouted Naruto while the irate mother was trying and failing to catch her son all over the house. Oh Kami, why did Oji-san have to teach him the surface sticking exercises? Now he is harder than ever to catch, thought Kushina tiredly, and stopped running suddenly with a serious look on her face. Naruto stopped and turned to see his mother awfully serious with her hands on her hips, looking at him sternly. He shrunk under her gaze when she held her hand out, and he walked up to her. He placed the bottle in his hands in her outstretched hand, which she took with a sigh. Naruto, sake is not for children. Why don't you ever listen to me? Asked the red-haired mother tiredly, making the boy look down a bit. I just wanted to try a little, I mean everyone says it's really good and all, he said a bit awkwardly, making Kushina narrow her eyes at the blonde. And just where did you hear that, Naru-chan? Asked Kushina neutrally, making his eyes turn up to her innocently, and all her anger died down as she gazed into those deep baby blue pools. Well, yesterday when Tsunade Bat-chan and Pervy Sage came, I heard them say it was the best thing to feel relaxed and have a nice sleep. Well, he trailed off, making Kushina's grip tighten on the bottle, causing it to crack a little. Next time I see them, I have to tell them what not to talk about in a house with children. And my baby boy is too damn curious for his own good, she thought tiredly, with a small smile lighting up her face when he wrapped himself up and put his face in her stomach. She wrapped her arms around his head and brushed his silky hair gently, making him snuggle in her embrace. And you two should have at least tried and stopped him, she scolded to the two hiding red-haired twins, making them stiffen and smile nervously. Well, We tried but Aniki never listens to us anyways, said Mito, and Menma nodded wholeheartedly, not wanting to come under his mother's wrath because of his brother's antics. She sighed and nodded, looking down at the snuggled-up mop of blonde hair in her arms. And you, Naru-chan, will have to listen to the rules of this house from now on. The liquor cabinet is off limits to the three of you. Do you understand? She asked, getting an instant nod from the two redheads and an innocent look from the blonde. So, can I try a sip? He asked curiously, making her sigh and slap her hand over her face. Mito giggled, seeing her mother's tired face, while Menma just didn't understand why his brother did such stupid things to make her all the more irate. For the love of Kami, listen to me when I... She trailed off, seeing the blonde take off and put on his sandals. Alright Kaa-chan, I get it. I just have to take it when you aren't looking. Well then, I'm off to the old man, see you later. He waved off and ran off, leaving a stunned Kushina behind. A moment later she broke out of her stupor and ran after him. That's not what I meant. Naru-chan. She shouted but sighed, seeing he was already gone. She would have to place some seals on the places she didn't want her son to reach just yet. She mused tiredly at wondering the work she had just gotten thanks to her enigma of a blonde. That boy is going to be the death of me, I swear. She whispered to herself and turned around to see two happy-looking redheads staring at her. She rose an eyebrow at their stares. Do you want something? She asked curiously and got grins from the two of them, making her confused. Tomorrow we start at the academy, Kaa-chan. Squealed Mito happily, and Menma nodded, making Kushina smile. And then Aniki can train with us and not left behind like always, added Menma, making her smile disappear from her face. She still had to talk to them about that. No, your brother won't be training with us, Menma, she said, getting looks of disbelief from the two, and were about to ask her why when she continued. Tobirama-Oji-san has taken him on as his student, so he will train with him, and he has my permission for it too. So, she wasn't able to finish when she saw the crestfallen face of Mito, and the indifferent face of Menma, though he too was quite displeased by the news. Why doesn't he want to train with us? Asked Mito with a small sniffle, while Menma was just plain annoyed. Yeah, he thinks he is better than us? Asked Menma in irritation, making Kushina's eyes widen at his words and then narrow dangerously. Menma, watch how you speak about your family in this household. What your brother does or doesn't is his choice, and I have given him the consent to do as he pleases. So watch your mouth in front of your mother, young man. She reprimanded, making him just huff in annoyance before she turned to the teary-eyed Mito. Her gaze softened, seeing the redhead girl. It was no news to her that she just adored and looked up to her Aniki more than anything, no matter how many faults he had. So it was no surprise that she was saddened by this. And Mito, your brother will be spending time with us like always. Just that he will be training with Tobirama-Oji-san in the meanwhile. She consoled her daughter, who ran up to her and hugged her tightly. Kushina just smiled and rubbed her head, softly turning her eyes to Menma, who was still a bit irritated, and motioned for him to come to her with one hand. He smiled and ran up to her in a hug, making her giggle at her children. They were all now growing up so much, right in front of her eyes, each day that she felt it was just too fast. Alright, now I have to make preparations for dinner, so hop to and go trouble your godfather for some training, she said playfully, making the two redheads turn and see the grinning toad sage in the garden. Both ran off while Kushina went off to finish up her chores and join them in the training later on. Meanwhile, with Naruto, the blonde walked in through the back garden to see Tobirama sitting on his porch with a brush in hand. He saw the scroll with several strange markings on it and was confused, and saw Tobirama's raised eyebrow turn to him. He raised his hand in a lazy manner of greeting. Yo! He chirped in a lazy tone, making him sigh. No matter what he did, the blonde student of his was still the same, he mused, and went back to work on finishing up the storage seal when he saw Naruto's eyes glued onto his work. Do you want to ask something? He asked stoically, getting a firm nod from the blonde. Yeah, you are working on seals, aren't you? He asked, getting a nod from the white-haired cage. Can you teach me some sealing then? He asked, surprising Tobirama. He had planned on teaching him sealing in the future, as he himself had many techniques that required intricate seals to perform, which he might even pass down to him. But he hadn't thought that the boy would be upfront to learning the relatively extinct and to most boring art himself. Of course, he stated in a matter-of-fact tone, returning back to the scroll in front of him. Naruto just sat and watched the man's firm and practiced hands work at the seal in a way a true seal master would, and it just increased his curiosity twofolds. He knew his father was one of the best when it came to sealing, along with his mother. Pervy Sage had a little skill with them too, but he didn't know how much his sensei knew about it. Hey old man, how much do you know about sealing? He asked curiously, making Tobirama look at him with a raised eyebrow, and he felt quite stupid from his stare, as if taunting him on. Both stared at each other for a few moments before Tobirama spoke up. My brother's wife Minato Uzumaki was a seal mistress like none other and the heiress to the Uzumaki clan during her youth. She was the one who refined and honed my skills in the art to perfection according to her clan's standards. As you must already know, your mother's clan, the Uzumakis, are expert seal masters. So I can say I am, if not greater than, on par with your mother and higher than any of the seal masters of this age, excluding her. He stated without a hint of pride or arrogance, and Naruto took it all in silently. A moment later he smiled and nodded. His master really was something. The man knew virtually everything in his eyes. He was the most knowledgeable man Naruto had ever met, and he would dare say he would ever meet. Tobirama finished up the seal and rolled up his scroll, walking inside. He came out a few moments later with a spare calligraphy kit and started his first lesson in sealing. Both went at it for half an hour in comfortable silence before Tobirama broke it. Naruto, stop, we have to talk. He said seriously, making the boy stop his brush and look at his master questionably. You remember the last spar we had? He asked seriously, getting a nod from the boy, who was still confused as to where he was going with this. That last maneuver wasn't a normal move at all. Most Chunins don't have the keenest instincts to pull off such a fast reaction to each and every counter. He said, getting a lost look from the blonde. Then how was he able to do it? He mused and sat silently, letting the man continue. Did you feel something different back then? He asked, making Naruto think back to the spar. Now that he thought about it. Yeah, there was actually. I've never felt such a rush in a spar any time before that. But when I launched my last attack on you, it was as if I could predict your moves a little, you know, as strange as it sounds. He said, surprising the man that he had picked up on it, and motioned for him to go on. And my vision was much sharper back then, almost as if I could make out the smallest of twitches in your muscles if I concentrated hard enough. I don't know, but it felt like everything was in slow motion. I must have really gotten into it that time, the old man. He asked with a chuckle, but stopped when he saw the stoic, serious face of Tobirama, who looked like he had already known what he had said beforehand. That was no simple adrenaline rush, Naruto. You awakened your bloodline in that instant, enabling you to do what should have been virtually impossible for a child your age. He explained, and the boy's heart skipped a beat. I have a bloodline? He asked incredulously, getting a simple nod from the man, making him rendered speechless. But how? You said it was passed on genetically, and neither my mother nor my father had any, except for those chakra chains my Ka-chan makes, and that is no bloodline, just a special chakra of sorts from what I know. He asked, still not believing it, making Tobirama smile. The boy was sharp, and wasn't taking his words for granted, instead was making his own assumptions and link proofs to his claim himself. That is where you are wrong, Naruto. Your father did have a bloodline. He stated in a matter-of-fact tone, making Naruto shocked to the core. His battle style was much too fast for any shinobi with normal eyes to comprehend and make counters at the speed at which he fought, especially when he used his Hiraishin simultaneously in battle. That is where his bloodline kicked in to negate that weakness. He explained seriously, and Naruto still couldn't believe his claims. But how come no one knew about this beforehand? He asked suspiciously, making Tobirama nod at his deduction. That is because he kept it hidden in his younger days, for he animosity and many questions, it would have brought to his head. And after so many years of hiding it, I guess he decided it was better if it stayed hidden to the end. He said, now making Naruto nod. He could see where he was going with this. So what is my bloodline? From what you say, it must be a dojutsu. If you said it were his eyes that enabled him to counter that weakness. He asked, making Tobirama smile proudly at how he had caught on to his words and nod. Indeed, your assumptions are correct. You, my disciple, possess the unique abilities of the Uchiha clan. The power of the Sharingan has been awakened in your eyes. He said, making Naruto's eyes widen in shock. Tobirama had explained to him about several clans, and their abilities, with the Uzumaki, Senju and Uchiha being the first since they were so important to the village. From what he remembered, it was the only bloodline which rivaled the Shodai's Makutan if mastered to the level it required on to have, and was the strongest of the Leaf's bloodlines. Now he could see why his father would hide it. Tobirama saw his shocked and silent face and watched as he came to terms with the news. But now he would have to explain why he had to hide it until he had mastered it to its truest potential. Naruto, you will also keep this matter hidden from everyone beside me and your mother, who already know. He said, breaking him out of his thoughts, and nod nervously. He must have told his mother, he mused, and sat there taking it all in. Tobirama too sat silently, seeing he had agreed and was not whining about showing it off like any other child his age could have done. Not that he expected him to. I'll place a seal on you which will hide it under a permanent genjutsu fueled by your chakra. This will let you use them and still make it so that the world is unaware of what hides behind it. He said, again getting a silent nod from the boy. He was still shocked that his father had a bloodline as strong as the Sharingan and that he had inherited it from him too. Come on, let's go to your house. I'll need to consult your mother with the seal. I have an idea as to which one your father used, but she could give me a better hindsight on it. He said, and stood up with Naruto following behind him. He kept walking silently when he asked a question that had been bugging him. Hey old man, will you teach me how to use it? He asked curiously, making Tobirama smirk and nod. Of course I will. It is too valuable a tool to possess and not take advantage of it. I have seen it in action many times in my younger days, and it can be quite the fearsome ability to possess if mastered correctly. Don't worry, you'll master it in time. He said confidently, making Naruto smile and nod happily while keeping in step with him. Uzumaki Namikaze households. Kushina and Drea were training the twins when she saw Tobirama and her blonde bolo Sunshine tagging along with him, making her smile and stop the training. Oji-san, what brings you here? She asked politely while the rest of the three watched on in curiosity. Kushina, it's time I applied the seal on him. I wanted to consult you first before I did it. He spoke seriously while crossing his arms in front of his chest, making her face turn serious, and she nodded. She turned to Drea, who was confused at the words of the Senju, and voiced out his doubts. Seal? What seal, Kushina? He asked, making her face turn emotionless before she broke into a warm smile. Nothing at all, Drea, we just have to strengthen the seal he already has. She lied cryptically, making the Toad Sage nod, understanding she must be strengthening the seal to ward off the Kyuubi's influence on the boy. She walked in with Tobirama following behind her while he had kept his hand on the nervous boy's shoulder, walking by his side silently. Sealing room. Kushina took them to the room, which was completely covered with various seals ranging from barrier privacy to several other seals to reinforce the room. She and Minato used this room to test new and dangerous seals, or apply the ones they already knew in secrecy from the world. Tobirama himself had a similar room in his house that he and Mito had prepared all those years ago. Naruto was quite nervous, not knowing how it worked when applying seals on a human. Naruto, sit in the middle of the room, said Kushina with a smile, and he nodded, sitting cross-legged in the middle. Take off your shirt, Naruto, stated Tobirama, catching the scroll Kushina threw towards him and started going through the seal she wanted him to place. He smirked, seeing both had almost the same seal in mind, bar a few minor differences at efficiency required for the amount of chakra it would drain, and he was surprised at how refined Minato had made it in his lifetime. Naruto almost jumped when 6 kunes were thrown all around him into the ground, courtesy of a stoic Senju, while Kushina started drawing a circle and several other kanjis required for the seal. Tobirama sliced his index and middle finger, starting to draw seals all over the boy's body, who felt quite nervous as several strange seals were painted all over him in blood by his master. Kushina finished up the seals on the ground and saw Naruto's scared face, making her realize how nervous he must be. "Naru-chan," she called out to the boy, whose eyes were shimmering in fright from the nervousness he felt, making her heart go out when he let out a small sniff. "Everything will be alright, just trust your Ka-chan on this, alright?" she said warmly to reassure the boy, and he nodded, wiping his eyes when Tobirama finished up his seals and Naruto was now covered in red kanji all over his body. "Alright Naruto, I'll start the sealing now. It might hurt you a little around your eyes and head, but try not to move, alright?" he asked stoically, getting a nod from the boy. He closed his eyes and focused on the sealing with a deep breath. His hands blurred through several strange hand seals, unique only to the Uzumaki clan and their brethren who knew their ways, and the kanji over Naruto's body glowed. He stopped at the 73rd hand seal and placed his palms around the boy's temples. "Uzumaki sealing style, illusion binding seal," he called out, pumping in his chakra into the seal, when Naruto let out a shrilled scream in pain, feeling his head burn and his eyes felt like they were on fire. "Fuin," he called out, finishing up the seal when all the kanji started getting absorbed all over from his body, including the markings on the ground, and made 2 circles around his eyes, which glowed for a moment before disappearing. Naruto's eyes rolled back into his head, and he fell sideways with a thump. Kushina immediately rushed to his side and scooped him up in her arms. She felt his soft breaths, which were still a bit rough from the pain he must have felt, and hugged him tightly while Tobirama wiped the sweat of his forehead. Uzumaki seals required a lot of chakra, he mused, walking up to the red-haired mother and crouched down to see the boy out like a light, and the worried eyes of the redhead. "He's fine, Kushina. The seal was perfect." He was cut off by her soft reply. "I know," she said, cradling her boy in her arms gently, making him quite confused. "Why does he always get the biggest of the burdens, Oji-san?" she whispered while running her fingers through his golden locks. Tobirama just sat down silently, hearing her pour her heart out. First he got the soul of the QB sealed in him, then the burden of his father's name and enemies. And now this? She whispered worriedly, hugging him tightly, making Tobirama smile sadly. It was indeed true, he already had a lot on his shoulders at such a tender age. "He has been having dreams, Oji-san," she whispered, making his eyes narrow at the redhead, who looked at him teary-eyed. "He has been thrashing around in his sleep, having nightmares of blood and destruction, with a beast the cause of it all," she whispered, making his eyes widen, realizing who the beast in his dream was. "QB," he whispered, getting a nod from the Uzumaki. "He says that he sees visions of that beast causing havoc all around him, with him standing on top of his head," she whispered, making his heart skip a beat at her words. The QB was starting to influence the boy and try and amplify his negative emotions. "Has this all been happening over the past few days?" he asked, getting a confused nod from her, confirming his suspicions. "I knew it," he whispered, rubbing his forehead tiredly, making her concerns grow bolder. "The QB has realized that the boy has awakened the Sharingan, and is no doubt trying to amplify his negative emotions to rile him up and do something stupid. He knows that with time, his eyes will cause him to be powerless against his host, and he intends to break free before it happens. I will have to up his mental conditioning as well," he concluded, making Kushina tear up for her boy. He had been his same happy self over the past few days, except his restless sleep and nightmares. She didn't know he was suppressing the influence of the influx of emotions caused to him by the soul of the Bajo he contained. "Don't worry, Kushina, his will is strong." His father entrusted the burden to his son, knowing he was up to it. "Have some faith in him," he consoled the mother, who nodded and wiped her eyes with a smile. "I know, Oji-san, I just worry about him," she spoke softly, not wanting to wake the boy, who was now lulled into sleep, and Tobirama nodded with a smile. Love will be the thing that will help him get through it all with a smile, Kushina. He said, seriously, getting the complete attention of the red-headed mother to his wizened words. The Sharingan are the eyes that reflect one's heart. The person who bears it has the deepest form of affections and love to the people who are precious to him. Never betray the person's trust and love, and the bearer shall be one of the most kind and loving people you'll ever have the pleasure of knowing. He said, making her surprised at how much he knew of the clan, but saw his face turn serious and those onyx eyes turn as icy as the coldest glaciers. But if their love and trust are betrayed or are torn away from their bonds, their hate is much more intense than the deep love they can bestow upon others. The deep love they feel makes their hatred almost impalpable, for they can be the kindest and most loving people or the most cold and ruthless of shinobi. He stated coldly, making her blood run cold as his words cut her heart like acid, and she clutched her baby tightly to her chest. The greater their hate, the greater their visual prowess becomes. The same can be said of their positive emotions, but their hatred increases their powers exponentially until they become fixated on it and go insane to the point of not trusting anyone. That is the curse of the power behind those eyes that each Sharingan wielder has to take upon himself. The greater the power, the greater the price you have to pay. Do not let him feel alone and pushed aside, Kushina. He has not one but two burdens he has to deal with each moment. He holds his innocence in his heart and loves his close people with all his heart. That is what scares me and makes me trust in him all the more. I'll nurture him and never let him fall to that accursed fate as long as he is under my shadow. He stated in a faraway voice, making her smile at his heartfelt words, and stand up with her baby boy in her arms snuggled in her warmth innocently. We won't let him fall to that fate, Oji-san. He will remain the same loving and kind boy we know and will always know. She stated in a determined voice, making him smile and nod himself. He stood up and followed her as she went into his room to tuck him in. Both heard footsteps behind him and saw Menma and Mito standing there a little confused as they saw their brother asleep while their mother was brushing his hair softly. "Ka-chan, is Aniki sick?" asked Mito in a worried voice, making her eyes fix on her and smile while shaking her head. "No, Mito, he's just tired from something, nothing for you to worry about, all right?" she asked, getting a happy nod from the bubbly girl while Tobirama noted the slight tinge of frown on Menma's face before it was replaced with a smile and nod. He shrugged it off and saw the two leave, deciding to leave himself. "All right, Kushina, I'll be off now," he said, surprising her when he smiled and spoke before she could speak to make him stay a while longer. "I'll be here tomorrow morning. After all, I can't miss his first day at the academy now, can I?" he asked, making her giggle and nod. "Yeah, he'll never let you live it out," she said in a happy giggle while he left her alone with the sleeping boy. She turned her gaze to his softly purring form and placed her lips on his head and brushed his hair gently. "Don't worry, Naru-chan. I won't make the same mistake twice and make you feel left out," she thought, walking out, while locking the door to go and continue the twins' training as she knew he would be asleep at least till late in the night to cope up with the ceiling. Next morning. Sun rays hit the shining silky locks of our favorite blonde hero, waking him up from his slumber. He felt tired, hungry, and had one hell of a headache. He clutched his head and groaned when the sound of his door opening hit his ears, making it sound as if someone was beating drums in his ears. "Ohio, Naru-chan." He heard the soft and warm voice of his mother and was thankful that she wasn't being too loud. He felt her sit down by his side and pull him onto her lap while his eyes gained focus and settled on the tray of breakfast laid in front of him. "Now eat up, you have to have breakfast before your first day of the academy," she whispered in his ear, making him smile when he remembered it was the day he had been waiting for. She made him eat a pill for his headache, and he ate up his breakfast while she kept her chin over his head and watched him eat slowly, savoring each bite unlike his siblings who gulped down everything in a mere instant. "Where are Mito and Menma, Ka-chan?" he asked, making her smile at his first question and kissed the top of his head gently while brushing his hair she loved so much. "They are out and about, signed 2 hours ago, can't stop their excitement for their first day," she said with a giggle, making him laugh himself and nod. "So did the seal work?" he asked, getting a happy nod from Kushina, and smiled. Channel chakra into your eyes, Naru-chan, she whispered, and he did so, instantly noticing the changes in his vision like earlier. So this was how he activated his Sharingan, he mused with a smile. Kushina saw his usual cerulean baby blue pools instead of the scarlet eyes of his Sharingan and smiled at the confirmation that the seal was perfectly synced now and needed no alterations. It's perfect, nothing to worry about, she assured him while he nodded. She kept holding him for a few moments in comfortable silence. So you excited for your first day? She asked, getting a bob of up and down under her chin, and giggled. At least he wasn't being hyper-excited like his siblings, she mused, hearing them play and argue outside. Now get ready and come down, alright? Then we'll head to the academy and fill out all your details and attend the introductory ceremony too, she said, making him smile and nod as he rushed off from her lap and into the bathroom, happily for a shower, while she went downstairs with a smile. He got showered and ready in a simple white t-shirt and blue pants to match his shinobi sandals, and strapped on his kunai holster in case he might need them, and patted it happily. Kushina saw him come down and smiled, but was surprised to see his kunai holster on his leg. She didn't remember getting him one, or for that matter, even the twins didn't have one. He must have gotten it from Tobirama, she mused, and looked at the happily chatting twins with Naruto just answering lazily every now and then in between. She heard the knock on the door and got up to see who it was. She opened it and was surprised to see Tsunade and Drea there with smiles on their faces, making her smile herself. I'm glad you two came, she said, making Tsunade grin. What kind of a godmother would I be if I didn't come to attend their first day at the academy? She asked innocently, making Kushina giggle and nod as she saw her children come there. Come on now, let's go, no need to be late on our first day, she said, making the twins squeal in happiness while Naruto was a bit nervous. What's the matter, Naru-chan? She asked, making him look at her with a small smile. Nothing, it's just that the old man isn't here, he said sadly, making Tsunade smile at how close her stoic granduncle was to the little blonde, which was quite unlike him. Don't worry, he'll meet us at the academy then. He promised you, didn't he, that he would come? And if the world knows one thing about Tobirama Senju, it's that he never breaks his word, she said to reassure him, and he smiled and nodded, strapping on his sandals and followed the party outside towards the academy. He kept on looking here and there for any signs of Tobirama when he saw a man leaning against his back to a tree right by the academy gates, and grinned at seeing Tobirama standing there in a blue shirt and pants with his eyes closed. Yo, old man, he called out to the man, making his stoic eyes turn to him and smirk. You're late, I thought you would have been here even before the gates to the academy opened, he said, making him rub the back of his neck sheepishly. Yeah, it's just that a black cat crossed our paths and we had to take the long way around, he motioned, making his eye twitch dangerously at his stupid and innocent excuse while the rest snickered in amusement at his expense. You really need to come up with some believable excuses, he said with a sigh, and walked with them into the gates. Kushina walked up to the desk where sat a Chunin with a scar running across his nose, who was taking in the new admissions at the academy, and smiled as he saw the group come to him, and stood up while bowing in respect at them, which Kushina waved off dismissively. She signed up the 3 children's details and saw the section for a male guardian or father, making her saddened that Minato should have filled that. She was broken out of her thoughts when she felt 2 hands on her shoulders and saw Tobirama and Drea there with small smiles. We'll fill out the rest, you go and group with the children, said Drea, making her smile and walk towards her children while he signed himself up for the twins, and Tobirama did it for Naruto. Both of them walked back to the group as they saw several families there to get their children and talking to each other. Tobirama was surprised at so many clan children there were in the year this time, but was broken out of it when he heard the stage being filled, and a voice he knew all too well rang out. Welcome to the Konoha Ninja Academy, where you'll all be spending the next 6 years in. You'll be nurtured to become the best of the village and to protect it with your lives. There is no great honor than to protect what you hold precious to yourself. So now, as is the tradition passed on to us since the time of Shodan Hokage, We shall have the Academy year's first spar to open the way to the future of these bright children. Rang the voice of the Sandaime Hokage while everyone clapped and cheered him on happily. Tobirama smiled, remembering the tradition his brother had laid out, and wondered who it would be whose names would come up when he saw Hiruzen putting his hand in the box containing their entrance forms and took out one. Sasuke Uchiha. He called out, getting several more applauds and claps from the crowd, while a small raven-haired boy came up to the stage with his elder brother accompanying him. Tobirama smiled at seeing this. He too wanted to see the little brother of the greatest Uchiha prodigy since Madara to show his potential when Hiruzen called out the second name. Naruto Namikaze. He called out, getting claps from most of the shinobi parents, with civilians applauding half-heartedly. Tobirama accompanied him to the center of the stage as Hiruzen took the down in the middle of the crowd to the ring. Naruto and Sasuke got into the middle of the ring, with Sasuke eyeing his opponent curiously to gauge his strength, while Naruto still had that lazy smile on his face and yawned a little, making him feel a bit annoyed that he was taking lightly. Alright now you two, this will be a taijutsu only spar that will span for 5 minutes, or either of you gets knocked out or thrown out of the ring. No shots that might harm your opponent and make this a good spectacle worthy of both your names, heritages, alright? Asked Hiruzen warmly, getting happy smiles from the two as Naruto unstrapped his holster and handed it to Tobirama, who crouched down and kept his hand on his shoulder, with Itachi too giving his little brother some last-minute advice. Alright Naruto, just use the Senju defensive style since the other one is much too dangerous and you haven't mastered it to the point of using it in a spar. And don't use that. I want to let you see what it is like to face an opponent of your same age, and he is an Uchiha, so remember what I have told you, alright? He asked, getting a nod from the boy, who understood he didn't want him to depend on his Sharingan in this fight, and he knew the Uchiha always used their opponent's strength against them and were really fearsome fighters, so this should be good. He walked back in the ring with Sasuke coming in too after a moment. The crowd watched on in bated breaths as the heir to the head family of the Uchiha clan and the infamous son of their beloved Yondaime stood facing off each other. Ka-chan, will Aniki be alright? Asked Mito worriedly, with Menma too concerned, knowing his brother didn't have the training they had. Kushina herself didn't know how far her blonde boy had come, but saw Tobirama standing there watching him like a hawk as if he didn't have an ounce of doubt. Her gaze turned to those piercing blue orbs, staring into his opponent with a shine of confidence in them, making her heart skip a beat when she saw an image of her late husband with the same confident expression whenever he went into a fight. He'll be fine, have some faith in him, she whispered, making the two redheads nod nervously as they turned their eyes back to the ring. No one noticed the two poking fingers of a certain lavender-eyed girl with her eyes, watching the ring, especially the blonde, in pure adoration, and whispered some words. Good luck, Naruto-kun, her soft voice said to herself while she watched on as Hiruzen stepped by the ringside. Alright, now take your stances, he said, making Sasuke fall into the first kata of the Uka's infamous interceptor fist, and Naruto slid into the defensive Senju style, earning several wide eyes and gasps at seeing the all-too-familiar taijutsu stance in action. Kushina herself was surprised that Tobirama had taught him his clan's most secret style of taijutsu, known only to the head family of the Senju clan, when Hiruzen raised his hand with a proud smile before bringing it down. Hajime. His voice rang out, and Sasuke took off quickly to catch his opponent off guard. He launched a straight fist for the blonde's face and saw him standing there as if frozen, making him smirk. He was shocked when Naruto caught his fist and launched one of his own, which he glanced to the side with his free hand, but still took a hit to the shoulder, making him wince slightly as he saw Naruto slide back into his stance, calmly with a small serene smile as if he was enjoying it. Sasuke himself smirked. He was the first his age who had ever landed a hit on him, and launched again with a jump and a roundhouse kick to Naruto's head that he blocked with cross arms and caught his leg to throw him aside, which Sasuke maneuvered easily to stand up like nothing happened at all. He launched another punch for the blonde's nose to cave him in, but Naruto slapped it aside to whiz past his ear and landed a hook right in his stomach, making him double over in pain, and kneed his chin to make him fall back with a gasp. The crowd was stunned speechless at the perfect execution to the counter of the heir to the Uchiha, but none more so than the Uzumaki family herself. Sugoi. Aniki is awesome. Squealed Mito in delight, making her mother giggle, while Menma clutched his knuckles tight at seeing his brother in action. Sasuke got up and glared at the blonde, who watched him calmly, making him all the more angry. That expression was making him think as if he wasn't even worth attacking. He ran at him and twisted his body for a kick that Naruto caught, but winced at the force behind it and skid sideways a little. He saw Sasuke launch a punch to capitalize on the opening, but was stunned when the blonde crouched in a mere instant, as if he almost knew the next move like he had done it 1,000 times. Naruto swiped his right leg in a semi-arc, taking out his feet from under him. Sasuke no expecting such an instant counter-attack feel down face first in the dirt when he felt his arm twisted behind his back and a knee applied pressure to his back quite painfully. Shasha Naruto Namikaze. Rang the pride-filled voice of Hiruzen while all of the shinobi clan heads clapped at seeing the brilliant display of taijutsu. Sasuke felt his arm getting free and the weight lift off. He sat up while dusting himself off at the humiliating defeat he had faced even after training with his father for a year. No doubt the blonde must be laughing. He was shocked when he saw an outstretched hand and looked up to see Naruto with his trademark lazy smile plastered on his face. It was a good match, he said honestly, making Sasuke's eyes widen in surprise at his words. His gaze turned to his brother, who smiled proudly and nodded and smiled, taking the blonde's hand to get up and shook his hand happily. Yes, it was. You're really good, he said in admiration, making Naruto rub the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, you're not so bad yourself. I look forward to our next spar, he said lazily, making Sasuke smile and nod. Yeah, me too, but I'll win next time, he said confidently, making Naruto grin foxily and nod. Yeah, we'll see about that, he said lazily and walked back to the proudly smiling Tobirama, who kept a hand on his head like always, making him feel so small in front of him. You did good, I'm proud of you, he said, making Naruto feel as if he had won the world with just those words and his training had paid off. He turned around when he was crushed in a bone-crunching hug, courtesy of an awfully happy Uzumaki mother. That's my Sochi, I'm so proud of you, she squealed in delight while Naruto flailed his arms around for air. Kushina, I think you're killing him, said Jiraiya, making her look down to see the squirming blonde and loosened her hold on him while he took deep and hard breaths. She rubbed her neck sheepishly while sticking her tongue out childishly. Oh, I am just too happy, Titeben, she reprimanded Jiraiya while Naruto turned to see his baby sister grinning. You were awesome, Aniki, she said in admiration, making him smile and pat her head lazily when he saw Menma with a small half-hearted smile of his own confusing him a little. Yeah, you did good, Naruto, he said half-heartedly while he just nodded, not knowing what was wrong, and looked to the side to instantly brighten up as he saw a family come up to him. Hina-chan, he said happily, watching the girl come with her father, who rose an eyebrow at seeing his daughter being so well acquainted with the blonde. She turned slightly pink and poked her fingers in her cute tick. That was a nice spar, Naruto-kun, she said shyly, trying to hide behind her father's leg to hide her embarrassment while he just smiled and nodded happily. Kushina though saw the pure adoration in her pearls when she saw her looking at Naruto and smiled herself. Hayashi too didn't know how his daughter knew the blonde. He wanted her to get to be friends with Menma, though he didn't have any qualms with the blonde himself, knowing the ways of the sealing arts and trusting his late friend, the Yondaime, in his abilities. But he didn't want to associate much more than necessary, seeing as how it might tarnish the name of the Hyuga clan. But this came as a surprise to him when he saw the children talking happily together and running in for their first lecture when he turned to Kushina, who was watching her blonde go off with his hands in his pockets while walking beside the shy Hyuga princess, who was looking at anything but him every so often, taking cute glances at him. You have trained your son well, Kushina. It was almost like seeing Minato back for a moment, he spoke stoically, making her smile and nod, seeing the truth in his words. I didn't train him, Hayashi, Tobirama-sama has taken him under his wing, she said, making him surprised yet nod at the same time. That explained the all too familiar taijutsu stance he used, and why the man was so close to the blonde the whole time. But it was shocking that the man who said he won't take another student regardless of refusing countless of prodigies from prestigious clans had taken up another student. Maybe the boy was more than what met the eye, he mused watching the boy enter the class with his daughter and walked back to the Hyuga compounds. Chapter 9. Time skip 1 year later. Konoha Ninja Academy. Alright class, and today, we will start about the history of how the village hidden in the leaves was founded by our two main founders of the village. The Chunin instructor of the academy Uruka Umino trailed off slightly when he gazed at one of the back benches of his class and his eye twitched. In one of the last benches beside the open window, enjoying the soft and cold breeze brushing past the window, a mop of blonde hair was sprawled across the desk, softly snoring away in silence and calmness. Beside him, a lavender-eyed girl was glancing at her bench partner nervously, seeing her instructor throwing a hateful glare at the peacefully sleeping blonde. She put her hand on his shoulder and let out a silent whisper out of everyone's earshot. "Naruto-kun," she whispered in her soft and angelic voice, making the sleeping boy smile softly in his sleep. 5 more minutes. He moaned softly and put his head in between his crossed arms happily while dozing off again. Uruka's eye twitched dangerously when he saw the blonde sleeping as if it was his own bedroom. And this wasn't his first time either, apparently it had become a routine of sorts. But Uruka could never reprimand the blonde for anything, since when he asked him questions about the lecture that he slept out, he would get answers that would go well beyond the normal scope of the topic. The instructor couldn't help but admire the boy's intelligence. But there were some major flaws too with his student. For example, that laziness that the blonde had reserved tons of somewhere within him. "Naruto Namikaze, wake up!" he shouted with a twitching eye, making Naruto's face scrunch up and his head lift off his desk pillow for the time being. He rubbed his eyes sleepily and let out a soft yawn, making the teacher's annoyance touch new heights. "Will you keep it down? People are trying to sleep here," he said within his yawn and kept his head down again to continue his slumber. The class broke out in a fit of laughter, even Hinata was giggling softly in her hand. Uruka gained a tick mark on his forehead and growled. "I said wake up, damn it!" he shouted using his patented big head no jutsu, making Naruto look at him in annoyance and wake up, his sleep now broke. He looked at his fuming instructor, who was fuming like an angry bull, and blinked innocently as if he had somehow invented the concept of man's first fire within his head. Uruka blinked back, seeing his student's face of innocent realization when Naruto stood up, much to his surprise. "Oh Kami, I slept in," he whispered to himself, making Uruka smile in relief. At least the blonde was starting to realize. His praise for the blonde within his head stopped when the voice of the window sliding open reached his ears and he saw the blonde with one knee and hand over the window, just about to jump out. His eyes widened when he saw Naruto waving his hand to him lazily and smiling. "I'll see you around, Uruka-sensei." He trailed off, making the instructor shell-shocked, and turned to the wide lavender-eyed girl who was looking at him like he was an alien of sorts. "I'll borrow your notes later on Hina-chan, alright?" he asked softly, making her nod with her cheeks turning pink from his affectionate tone with which he spoke to her and the nickname he always called her with, and nodded meekly while gazing at her lap shyly. "Johnny," he said lazily and jumped out, much to the shock of Uruka, who broke out of his stupor and ran up to the window hurriedly to see the blonde jumping over the fence and running off into the village streets. "Naruto, come back here," was the shout heard across half the village, courtesy of an irate Chunin instructor, watching his student run off in the middle of class while his whole class laughed at his expense. The instructor sighed tiredly, but couldn't help the small smile that lit up his face at the boy's antics. He always kept him on his toes, he mused when he caught the collars of 3 boys and smiled at them sweetly. "And just where do you think you are going, Kiba, Choji and Shikamaru?" he asked innocently, making them gulp and laugh nervously. "Well, you see, Uruka-sensei," the chubby boy said in a nervous laugh, and the class watched their sensei start his reprimand over the 3 about the importance of history classes and the like. Senju compounds. Naruto walked into the Senju compounds with his usual lazy smile and his hands in his pockets. He came to the door and gave it a knock to have his white-haired master open the door and raise an eyebrow at seeing the blonde standing there. "Aren't you supposed to be at the academy?" he asked and got a nod with a lazy smile back and stood silently, awaiting for an explanation for which he already had an idea of what was to come. "Yeah, the lectures were too boring. Something about the foundations of our village and stuff. I already know that. Plus, I slept half the time, so might as well use the rest to train, you know," he asked, making the Senju sigh tiredly. The boy did this quite often. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't deny the blonde's words. If he already had knowledge of the subject being taught, then he couldn't hope to have the boy paying rapt attention to it with the blonde's ever-present laziness there. "You still shouldn't skip out on lectures, Naruto," he reprimanded half-heartedly and sighed again when the blonde waved his hand dismissively and stepped in the house without a care for his words. He walked in behind his pupil and took to the training grounds right behind him as the both face each other in the middle of the clearing. "Alright then, let's perfect the jutsu we have been working over till now and continue on where we left off," he said, getting a nod from the boy. He took out a scroll from his pocket and pumped some chakra into it to summon a basket full of rubber balls. Naruto groaned inwardly seeing those accursed things. There, that hurt like hell, and watched Tobirama pick up a handful of them in each of his hands and look at him like a predator who was about to ravage his prey. "Alright, you know the rules. Dodge as many as you can by using only the jutsu I have had you working on and nothing else," he said, gaining another nod from the boy. He started launching his barrage of rubber balls straight at the boy and smirked when he watched the boy disappear in a puff of smoke just as the boy was about to be pelted with the balls and was replaced with a log instead. "The boy is improving quite a bit," he mused and launched another barrage at the new location the boy had arrived at almost instantly. He watched on proudly as yet another perfect seal-less kawarimi was executed and turned his eyes to the left to throw his third set of rubber balls. These ones were really quick and Naruto wasn't able to focus his chakra quick enough, resulting in his chest getting pelted by the rubber balls harshly and slid back from the force in a harsh cough. "Kami, does he hit hard?" thought the blonde, glaring at his master, who looked on at his pupil stoically and readied for his next attack. He stood up straight and pulled off another seal-less replacement just as the barrage was about to make contact. "Yes, that's it, don't lose your focus, Naruto," shouted Tobirama, unleashing another attack at his student, who performed yet another perfect replacement much to his happiness. 3 hours later, we find an 8-year-old blonde boy sprawled on the ground like a bed sheet with deep heavy breaths, looking at the sky with half-lidded eyes. His whole body ached with being pelted with sometimes with those rubber balls and didn't have an ounce of energy left to even move. "Naruto!" He heard his master call out to him and sat up with a groan to see him motioning for him to come near him. He stood up with a wince at his aching muscles and made his way to the man, who smiled when his student was standing in front of him and put his hand over his head and ruffled his hair with a proud smile. "I'm proud of you, Naruto. You did well past what I expected from you," he said in a warm tone, making Naruto flush in embarrassment yet smile a bit nervously, and rubbed the back of his neck, not really knowing what to say. "Yeah, thanks, old man. I tried my best," he said a bit nervously, making Tobirama smile. The boy never really went over the top and became a bit nervous when praised, trying to brush it off. It was a nervous tic that he had gotten used to over the past few years with him, and it made him happy that the boy took nothing for granted. "So why have you been pushing so hard for this jutsu, old man? I mean, you had me master the solid henge first, and then the kawarimi to do them without seals. I mean, no one really puts that much effort into them, after all they are only E-rank ninjutsu." He was cut off by the narrowed eyes of his master, who answered his query in his usual stoic voice. "These are the basics upon which you would go on through your whole life, Naruto. These two jutsus, if used perfectly, save your life more times than any other technique I know of in the shinobi arts. Why people never master it to the fullest is beyond me, but I won't have my student die because he wasn't able to pull off a perfect replacement in time and die in the battlefield for the lack of training in an E-ranked jutsu like kawarimi," he explained calmly, and Naruto nodded with a look of admiration for the man. He never settled for anything less than perfection and had told him he won't teach him any other technique until he had mastered these two first. But why not the clone jutsu, old man? He asked in innocent curiosity and grew confused at the frown that marked his master's face. Because it is utterly useless, he stated bluntly, making Naruto's eyes widen in shock. It was one of the basic 3 ninjutsu required to pass the academy after all. But why is that, old man? He asked, now completely confused, since never had he heard the man render a technique as dismissively as he had heard just now. He would get the same answer every time he asked him a question about his doubts on a technique. Never underestimate any technique, for in the heat of battle, the most useless and unpredictable of all techniques sometimes turn the tide of battle completely. He recited the words Tobirama had spoken to him in his head word for word, and looked at the man whose frown hadn't left his face and had instead turned into a full-blown scowl of disgust. I made the cloning technique a necessary requirement to pass the academy, since it was one of the 3 basic techniques I knew a shinobi uses for his complete lifetime, he said, getting a nod from Naruto. But what I meant were solid clones. Those clones they teach you at the academy are mere illusions. Any shinobi worth his merit can decipher a clone for a real user in a mere glance, rendering it completely useless. The standards of the academy have fallen to a new level of low if one could graduate by learning such a pathetic skill, he said in disgust, making Naruto nod. He had learnt all about the different types of clones when he was learning about the various elemental natures, and there were solid clones of every element, with some of them even being non-elemental. Besides, you won't be able to do the clone jutsu if you had to bet your life on it. Your chakra is much too dense and powerful to execute a technique requiring such minuscule amounts of chakra, even with the amount of chakra control I have drilled into your head, he said in his calm voice, making Naruto quite surprised and shocked at the same time. Then how am I going to graduate the academy, old man? It is a necessary requirement to pass it after all, he said in a worried voice, but stopped seeing the smirk on his master's face. I have a different type of clone technique I made myself that I'll teach you soon enough, don't worry. The extra credits at the examinations will make you pass with even higher scores than you would if you executed the normal one perfectly, he said with a smile, making Naruto grin foxily and nod in happy mood. His eyes narrowed when his senses tingled, making Tobirama smile at how far his sensing abilities were progressing as well ever since he had taught him the water walking exercise, which he had yet to master completely, but he was close to mastering it now. He saw Naruto's narrowed eyes widen before he grinned happily and ran by his side to the figure that appeared behind him in a blonde blur. Shisu, he chirped happily and barreled into the Uka's chest, who caught the excited blonde with a chuckle. How are you doing, my chibi blonde? He asked with a grin, making Naruto pout cutely and cross his arms with a huff. Don't call me that, he said, puffing his cheeks, and grumbled when the raven-haired boy just ruffled his silky hair with a slight laugh. Yeah, you're still chibi to me, Gaki, he said, making Naruto even more angry before he continued by bringing his lips closer to his ear, making Naruto listen on curiously. So how is the technique I taught you coming along? He asked in a slight whisper out of Tobirama's earshot, and grinned when he saw the blonde grin foxily. It's going great. I'm almost there, Shisu, he said happily, making the Uchiha nod and smile proudly. He took out a small scroll and handed it to Naruto, who took it with an excited look in his eyes when he saw the Uchiha symbol that the scroll donned. Then start on this when you are done mastering the previous one, alright? I'll teach you if you have any doubts. Just come over to me, he said, and Naruto threw his arms around the crouching Uka's neck, who hugged the boy he had come to see as his little brother over the past year with a chuckle. Tobirama smiled as he walked to the 2 happily chatting boys and coughed slightly to make their attention turn to them. He smiled in amusement when he saw the 2 of them turn sheepish and rub their necks in almost complete sync. So what brings you by today, Shisu? He asked stoically, making the boy bow to the man in respect. We should talk in private, Tobirama-sama, he said in a serious voice, making Tobirama nod and look at his pupil, who just smiled lazily while walking out of the clearing with a wave of his hand. Yeah, I'll head home too, old man. See you tomorrow, he said while putting his hands in his pockets, and Tobirama took the Uchiha to his living room and sat on his couch to see the Uchiha really serious about something. Tobirama-sama, I need your advice, he said, confusing the Senju completely, though heard him out patiently. The things I'm about to say are only known to the Sandaime and the three elders of the village for now, along with my friend Itachi. But I needed a person who would be able to give me something to make the impending situation on the village stop from what is about to happen, he said, making Tobirama's eyes harden and nod at the mention of the village and how secretive the matter was. He instantly stood up and went through hand seals, slamming his palm on the ground when kanji covered it and the room was sealed for privacy as he retook his seat. Tell me about it and I'll do my best to help, he said stoically, and got a nod, along with a deep breath from the Uchiha. He saw the boy as his own nephew since his father Kagami had been his student and subordinate during his younger days before the man sacrificed his life in the Third Great Shinobi War. He had known the boy since he was a little child, and the boy always came to him when he had a matter that he could see no way out of. The Uchiha clan is planning a revolt against the village, he stated bluntly, making Tobirama's eyes widen in horror. A moment later they narrowed in anger, which he kept in complete check, already expecting them to do something so stupid. Since when? He asked emotionlessly, making Shisu look down in anguish. A year now, he said sadly, making Tobirama quite shocked. How long has Hiruzen known about this? He asked emotionlessly yet again, making the onyx black eyes of the Uchiha Anbu to meet his. 8 months, he stated seriously, shocking Tobirama to the core. Then why hasn't he done something about it already? Has that monkey finally gone senile? He asked, losing his temper a bit at seeing the situation so dire, and Shisu nodded. He tried to talk them out of it peacefully, but all attempts have failed until now, he said, making a growl die down in the Senju's throat. What kind of a failure student did I nominate as my successor then? To think he isn't able to keep the village's founder clans unified and defuse the situation in such a long time, already knowing about it, he thought angrily, and watched the Uchiha with softened eyes when he saw how tired the boy looked. How long until they make a move then? He asked the question most important at the time, and Shisu looked down in shame. In 2 weeks' time, just a couple of days before the Kyubi festival, when the village is busy preparing for it, he said in agony, making the Senju fall silent and run hundreds of scenarios within his head with his eyes closed. He rubbed his forehead when he saw only one outcome coming on top each time, and knew that his student won't have the power to really pull off the decision if it was made by the council elders. You have a plan then? He stated, more than asked, and watched the Uchiha smile sadly and in admiration before giving him a nod. Yes, I have talked to the Sandaime about this too. There is a way with which I could defuse the situation completely for the time being, he said, making Tobirama raise an eyebrow. His eyes widened when he saw the boy's eyes turn scarlet into a 3-tomo Sharingan before the tomo spun, shrunk and joined to form a 4-pin shuriken. The Mangekyu Sharingan, he whispered in realization, making Shisu quite shocked that he knew about the most forbidden of secrets of his clan, but he couldn't expect any less of the man. Yes, Tobirama-sama, I have a genjutsu, the Katoma Tsukami. It allows me to plant new ideas into someone's head so subtly that I can almost create false memories and experiences for the victims to make them believe anything I want. I will launch the genjutsu tomorrow on the clan elders and heads to make them stop the revolt and planned coup d'etat. It is the strongest Mangekyu Sharingan genjutsu in existence, he said, making Tobirama stunned. He always knew the boy was a prodigy in the illusion arts, but to think he was capable of such feats that not even Madara himself was able to do in his prime. He really was a genius when it came to the art. But why are you telling me this, child? I don't see where you need my advice, he asked in confusion to meet Shizui's pained eyes. Am I doing the right thing, Tobirama-sama? I am manipulating them, their thoughts, their hearts. They are my clan, isn't it out of boundaries? His babbling was cut short by Tobirama's calm reply. If you do not pull through with it, there will be a civil war in the village if Hiruzen isn't able to defuse the situation first, which he should have until now. Many people will die on both sides, and the internal strife will bring in wolves from the outside who will no doubt take advantage of the situation. It would be the trigger required for the Fourth Shinobi World War as we know it, he stated, making Shisu fall silent at his wise and experienced words, and listened on like a little child to the man's words. The children of your clan and your village will be caught in the strife between the two factions. Many of them killed, the others being orphaned. Are you willing to take that on your conscience? He asked calmly, making Shizui's eyes widen in horror as he realized the truth behind his words. Is it a greater burden than the subtle manipulation of some of your clan members bent to make the situation rise up to it, to make sure the peace in the village is maintained? Ask yourself that and come to a decision on your own. For it is only you who will make the decision. Me or any other can show you a path, but it you who must follow it to the end, child. He said warmly, making Shisu tear up slightly before he wiped his eyes and nodded. He stood up with a new fire and determination in his eyes with a smirk. I have made my decision, Tobirama-sama. All my doubts have been answered, thank you. I knew you were the right person to come to, he said while walking out and putting his crow mask on. Tobirama, however, smiled sadly as he watched the boy walk out of his house. You should have come to me a lot earlier, child. Then maybe I could have devised a way to avoid this situation altogether, he whispered to himself while shaking his head sadly, and walked into his room to get some sleep as the old age weighed down on his shoulders. Uzumaki Namikaze households. Kushina had served up dinner to the two of her children, since they had been hungry after their day's ninjutsu practice in the academy earlier, and took a seat with the twins on the dining table. So how did the day at the academy go? She asked curiously, making both of them to stop eating and look at their mother. A moment later, Mito grinned happily. It was great, Kaa-san. Iruka sensei taught us the henge. Me and Menma nearly finished it too, you know. She chirped happily, making Kushina smile and put her chin over her locked fingers happily at seeing her bubbly girl, so happy. Yeah, but Naruto should have been there too, you know. Menma said while putting a bite into his mouth, making Kushina raise an eyebrow at his words. Mito was sending a mild glare at her brother for revealing her Aniki's bunk without even being asked, but he ignored it completely. He flunked out in between our lecture again, Kaa-san. Iruka sensei couldn't catch him after he left by leaping through the window so quickly. Made us miss a few minutes of our lecture from the disruption he caused in the class, he stated calmly, making Kushina frown at his words. She saw Mito glare heatedly at the red-haired boy and spoke up. Is it true, Mito? She asked calmly, making Mito sadden a bit and nod silently. Kushina heard the door being opened and a battered and tired Naruto walked in with quite roughed up clothes, showing her how hard he must have trained today. Naruto, she called out, making the boy look at her curiously, and saw her walk up to him and stand in front of him with a stern look on her face while holding her hands on her hips. Did you flunk out of the class in between the lecture today? She asked calmly and was surprised when he nodded innocently. Hi, he said in his soft tone, making her look at him curiously. She had half expected him to deny or lie altogether, but this was surprising. The twins watched on intently at how he handled Kushina. Why? She asked in a firm tone, which Naruto didn't notice due to how tired and beat up he felt at the moment. I knew all that Iruka sensei was saying before he even began. It was so boring I slept off in between his lecture, and when he woke me up I decided not to waste my time there anymore and went to the old man's for some training, he said, surprising her by his honest words quite a bit along with the twins. Menma though clutched the chopsticks in his hand hardly when he saw his brother rise up on his toes and plant a kiss on his mother's cheek, making her smile fondly, and her anger died down when she saw him yawn tiredly. I'm beat, Kaa-chan. The old man pushed me a lot today. I'll go and sleep now, alright? You can give me the lecture tomorrow when I'm fresh and ready to listen, and will most probably not fall asleep, he said, picking an apple up and walking up the stairs to his room, leaving a fondly smiling Kushina who just sighed tiredly and rubbed her temples. That boy I will never understand, she said to herself tiredly, making Mito giggle at how her Aniki would always get off without even a small lecture with his little tricks. Menma focused on his food entirely, though wasn't feeling particularly hungry now and retired to his room himself. 2 days later. Senju compounds. Tobirama sat on the porch of his garden, enjoying the early sun rays of the morning like he always did. But something just didn't feel right today. There was a feeling of foreboding and something vile in the air that just irked him to the core. Something bad was about to happen, and he could feel it now. He was on his guard when he felt an incoming presence and flicked out his kunai but loosened his grip when he saw the heir to the Uchiha clan standing in front of him. Though when he saw him closely, he was horrified at the amounts of blood the boy was covered with and rushed to him immediately. He stopped when the boy just raised his hand and spoke up. "It isn't my blood, Tobirama-sama," he said stoically in a dead voice, making Tobirama a bit confused before his eyes widened in horror when he saw the guilt and regret in the boy's eyes. "No," he whispered, making the Uchiha smile sadly and nod. "Yes, your assumptions are correct as always, Nadame-sama. I was ordered by the Sandaime and the village elders to stop the revolt rising within our clan after it looked unavoidable with the last available plan failing," he said, making Tobirama's heart drop. He clenched his eyes shut and couldn't help the lone tear that escaped his left eye as he clutched his crossed arms tightly. Though then he registered what the boy had said. "What do you mean the last available plan failed? Why didn't Shisu do what he planned all along?" he asked, making another sad smile mar the Uka's face. "So I see he told you everything like I thought. It wasn't like he didn't do it, Nadame, he couldn't do it," he said stoically, making Tobirama scowl at his words. "Why?" he asked, barely maintaining his composure now. "Because someone killed him before he could execute his plan," he said, making Tobirama's eyes widen in shock yet again. "But who would?" As if hearing his question, Itachi answered. "It was Danzo," he said, making Tobirama's blood boil and his killing intent to be let loose around him, which didn't affect Itachi in the slightest. He thought that it was only a temporary solution and that our clan needed to be gotten rid of for the village to prosper. He tried to take Shizui's eyes for his own and even managed to get one, he said, making Tobirama clench his knuckles and jaw tightly. His failures of students were doing everything in the book to make him feel all the more disgusted with them, he thought angrily. "And what about the other one?" he asked calmly, masking his emotion perfectly when he saw Itachi take out a vial with a green preservation fluid and lone Sharingan eye floating in it. Itachi walked up to Tobirama and put eye in front of Hai, which Tobirama took without a word, knowing who it belonged to already, and a choke was held back in his throat barely. "It was Shizui's last wish for me to deliver it to you personally, Nadame-sama. He said you would know how to use its power best and not let it fall into the wrong hands. He said you would understand," said the stoic Uchiha, getting a nod from Tobirama when Itachi dispersed in a flock of ravens and Tobirama instantly sealed the vial up in his wrist in a personal blood and chakra restricted seal. He walked out of his house with the aura of power radiating all around him. Everywhere people moved out of the intimidating man's path who was walking like a god among men. Hokage Tower. Tobirama walked up the steps of the tower, and with each step each persona around him took a step away when he reached the desk to the Hokage office, and the receptionist stood up and bowed in respect at seeing the man walking towards her. "Nadame-sama. Wait, you don't have an appointment." She trailed off when the man walked right past her as if she wasn't even there and saw two Anbu guarding the doorstep in front of his path to block entry to the office which once belonged to him. "I'm sorry, Nadame-sama, but you do not." The Anbu wasn't able to finish since Tobirama had both of them in a chokehold while they held his strong arms like frightened girls. He slammed their faces together, knocking them out cold in a flick of a second, and kicked the door with a chakra-enhanced kick. The door flew right of its hinges and many feet away, with the two rag doll Anbus following in close behind it. "Who the hell? Sensei." "Ugh." Hiruzen started but stopped at seeing his sensei before he was in a choke hold himself in a second. He slammed his face on his desk, making Hiruzen's nose break and a torrent of blood flew out. Tobirama threw the man towards the wall containing the portraits of the Hokage, and Hiruzen slammed right into it with a loud bang. Tobirama was instantly surrounded by 3 teams of Anbu who were pointing shaky swords at his fatal organs while he glowed in the power his chakra was radiating and didn't even look up from his downed student. "Everybody stand down," came the muffled voice of Hiruzen, who stood up, fighting off the dizziness in his head, and saw the Anbu still on guard, making him turn furious. "I said stand down now," he roared, making them shiver and stand back when Tobirama made his way to his student calmly. "Sensei, please understand there was no other choice, I had to give the order." Hiruzen tried to explain, but was cut short when a voice rang throughout the office. Slap. The earlier blows didn't hurt Hiruzen as much as that simple slap on his cheek did. But even more did it pain him to see the broken and pained eyes of the ever-calm Senju, who had 2 silent, tear streams flowing down his cheeks as he watched him in disgust. Hiruzen couldn't even meet the man's eyes, who was looking at him in utter disdain. The whole office was now filled with several Jounin, Chunin and Anbu, along with the officials who worked at the office, as they all watched the commotion silently between the 2 Hokages. Tobirama glanced to the side to see the smiling face of his elder brother in the portrait on the wall. He ran his fingers on the picture with a faraway gaze and closed his eyes in pain. "I'm sorry, Hashirama. I'm glad you are dead before the time you had to see this. I have failed what you dreamed for, brother," he whispered and walked towards the door of the office. Everyone stepped away to make way for him and not come in his way when they saw Hiruzen fall to his knees and punch the ground in agony. "Hokage-sama." An Anbu stuttered out, holding a bandage for his nose, when they heard the dead voice of Hiruzen ring through the office. "Leave this office, no meetings today. I want to stay alone," he whispered, but all of them heard it clear as crystal and quickly emptied the office. "How could I have let this happen?" he growled, slamming another fist in the wall angrily as the news spread like wildfire that the mightiest and oldest of the clans in the elemental nations were now nearly extinct. The Uchiha clan was no more. Chapter 10. Konoha no Sato. Next morning. Memorial grounds. Almost the whole village was gathered at the memorial grounds for the combined funeral of the once great Uchiha clan. The village had taken a severe hit in its forces, especially its internal security, since the complete Uchiha police force, which took care of all internal affairs, had been wiped out too. The whole burden had been thrust over the shoulders of the Anbu Black Ops, thinning out the already far too slimmed upper tier of Konoha's forces even further. All of the shinobi and civilians were paying their respects to the newly built Uchiha headstone in the memorial grounds in honor of the deceased clan members. Tobirama stood with his arms crossed and his stoic mask put up on his face as he watched several people pay their respects and put down the flowers for the deceased. Only 2 were not there, both the last remnants of the almost extinct clan. Sasuke Uchiha, the lone survivor of the massacre, was still in the hospital, still recuperating from the vicious mental attack his brother had unleashed upon him, and was undergoing therapies from the experts of the Yamanaka clan. The second, however, his narrowed stoic eyes softened when he watched a lone mop of blonde hair sitting in front of a grave. Naruto's cerulean baby blue eyes, the ones that always shimmered with innocence and happiness, watched on in sorrow and despair as his small hand traced the name engraved upon the grave among the hundreds sprawled all across the grounds. Shisu Uchiha. He read, and a lone tear rolled down his eye when he read the name of his elder brother in all but blood. He had connected to him much more than anyone other than his mother and Tobirama himself over the past year. Tobirama had, after a long thought, surmised that the only way to truly make Naruto learn the intricacies and the untapped potential his eyes held, had asked the one man among the Ukkas that he had known ever since he was an infant. Kagami Ukka's son, Shisu Uchiha. The only person other than Kushina and Tobirama who knew of what lurked behind the sealed illusion of those baby blue orbs. Naruto had never felt such a lovely bond before. Sure, Tobirama and he were really close, his mother he loved more than anything in the world, along with his siblings, but the bond with Shisu was different. The Genjutsu master always took time out of his tight Anbu schedule to train with Naruto and pulled off several pranks in the village too. They had become a menace around the village. One in Anbu and the other just as skilled in stealth to evade them. Well, Truly it was a troublesome duo to say the least. He was much closer to Naruto's age and thus the boy could relate to the 20-year-old Anbu. Their personalities matched too, both were happy-go-lucky and loved to have fun every now and then, though when push came to shove they trained themselves to the ground while donning their infectious stupid grins. Tobirama had helped him master his basics, but his first important jutsu had been taught to him by his brother only recently. "You didn't even see me master it, Shisu," he whispered sadly with teary eyes as he thought back to the day when he had pestered the Uchiha finally to the point that he had relented in and taught him a jutsu. Flashback. "Come on Shisu, please, just one jutsu," whined a blonde boy clutching the waist of the Uchiha, who let out a tired sigh. "Oh shut it Chibi, you are getting trained by a Hokage whose specialty lies in creating jutsus. Tobirama-sama will teach you." He was cut off when he saw the pleading eyes of the blonde and his will wavered. Those wide blue eyes looked at him so innocently that he would have taught him anything if he stared long enough. "Shisu, the old man has been keeping on about his need for perfecting my basics. I mean mastering henge and kawarimi is fine and all, but I need a real jutsu. And I have worked hard on water, walking too, so my control is up to par 2, come on just one please Oni-sama," he said softly, making Shisu last defenses crumbled when he gave in to the soft melodic voice of the chibi blonde he loved so much. Especially after he had played the Oni-sama card, he couldn't say no. "Alright." He trailed off when he saw the blonde pump his fist happily. "Yada!" he exclaimed, making the raven sweat drop at being tricked so easily, but smiled fondly when he saw the eager face of the jumping blonde, who looked to be too high on sugar and candies. A moment later the blonde blur barreled straight into his chest, and he chuckled when he saw the star-filled eyes of the chibi blonde he loved so much. "Sue, what are you going to teach me?" "Oh I know, teach me that cool jutsu that makes you disappear and reappear as an after image. Old man said you were the best at it, or I know maybe one of those genjutsus. I swear Uruka sensei won't know what." He was cut off when a hand sat atop his head and stopped his babbling, making him look at the amused onyx orb staring at him while he looked back innocently. "Alright, calm down and I won't teach you anything that will make it even harder for the village to catch you after some of your infamous pranks." He chuckled when Naruto slumped in defeat and bobbed his head down lifelessly. "But I will teach you something pretty cool." He trailed off when the blonde's head whipped up and grinned foxily. "Come on, tell me Shisu please," he said, making him smile and nod. He pulled the blonde in a hug and used his famous smoke-less shunshin to disappear with the blonde to another part of the training fields in the village. Naruto looked around to see they were in some training ground he had never seen before and near a lake when he saw the Uchiha walk to the lake and followed on curiously. He watched him stop at the shore and looked at the smirking Uchiha who ruffled his hair gently, making him groan. "Alright, now activate your Sharingan and watch me closely, alright?" he asked, making Naruto's head bob up and down, making the raven turn to the lake and ready himself for the jutsu. "Snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. Fire style, grand fireball jutsu," he exclaimed while his hands blurred through the jutsu that had become almost second nature to him and ringed his thumb and index finger in front of his mouth. He took in a deep breath and needed chakra in his lungs to convert it into fire and breathed it out through his mouth in a narrow stream of flame. Naruto watched in slow motion, his Sharingan following the narrow stream, when much to his astonishment the narrow stream expanded into a full-blown fireball and the lake let out a hiss of steam. "Sugoe!" he exclaimed in a starstruck voice, making Shisu chuckle. He knew it was only a C-rank, offensive technique, but for an 8-year-old, the prospect of firing a fireball out of his mouth was just something from heavens. "So you memorized the hand seals and chakra molding, right?" asked the Uchiha, making Naruto's eyes snap back at him and nod with a foxy grin. "Hi, just you see, I'll have it done in no time," he chirped happily, making Shisu crouch down to his eye level and put a hand over his shoulder. He looked at the blonde fondly, now understanding what it meant to pass down a legacy down to a little brother. "Naruto, this jutsu is really special, you know that?" asked the boy, making Naruto's eyes blink innocently and shake his head honestly. Shisu smiled at the honest boy and squeezed his shoulder to emphasize his words. Naruto, this jutsu is one which all Uchiha clan members learn. It is a rite of passage. When one truly masters this jutsu is the day our clan considers him to be a true shinobi ready for the world since the era of the warring states and don the symbol of our clan proudly. Now you may not be an Uchiha completely, but you do have the Sharingan and I can tell the Uchiha blood flows strongly in you. I won't even check your affinity for this one Naruto, for it is a technique I want you to learn regardless. I want you to complete the ritual that each Sharingan holder before you has completed, he said warmly, making Naruto look at him seriously and nod at his words, seeing how important the technique truly was. Shisu saw the fire in his eyes when his gaze turned to the lake, and he saw the blonde walk past him, making him smile. Now he knew what it felt to pass down a legacy to a close person, and he had to say he knew why people said being a teacher was something special. He saw the back of the boy and how his hair flowed in the wind, a vision of the past. The Yondaime silhouette hovering over him was what he envisioned, or a moment as he couldn't help but see the way the two blondes held themselves was eerily familiar. He had looked up to the Yondaime as his idol, and it was his way of catching up to him that he had reinvented the shunshin to his needs in remembrance of his idol. You are destined to be a great man, Naruto. Tobirama-sama saw it, and now I see it too. He mused when he saw the blonde blur past hand seals to make his first attempt at the jutsu. End of flashback. Naruto kept his gaze on the grave of his brother, when he felt a hand on his shoulder and looked back to catch the gaze of his mother looking at him with a soft smile, with his lone visible eye visible to her. She didn't know how fond he had grown of Shisu, but the look in his eyes told her how much he was grieving in his loss. Naruto, let's go home, baby. It's going to rain soon, she said softly, making his eyes turn back to the grave and stare at it longingly. You go, Kaa-chan. I want to stay here a little longer, he said in his soft, broken voice, making her heart clench. She watched as the two redheads in their matching black elegant Uzumaki clan kimonos came by her side while she gazed at Naruto, who was in a simple black shirt and pants. He had never really liked the formality of kimonos, and she got down to her knees behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders, while pulling him back into her chest from his back. She wrapped him up in her arms and put her chin on his head while giving it a soft kiss and nuzzled her cheek in his silky locks. Naru-chan, let's go. Shisu wouldn't want you to stay in the grievance of his loss for too long, would he? She asked softly when she felt his little form tremble in her arms and the sounds of choked sobs reached her ears. Why did he have to die, Kaa-chan? It's not fair, he sobbed, making her tighten her hold on him and turned him around to cup those puffy whiskered cheeks. She kissed his tears away and looked at him with a soft smile. He needed to let go and come out of grievance, or it wouldn't bode well for a mind as young and troubled as his. Naru-chan, everyone has to go one day. You need to let go and make sure you live the way he would have wanted you to, so that he may be proud when he watches you from above in Kami's realm, right? She asked softly as she brought his head in her chest and cradled her son while brushing his hair gently. His sobs racked her body and she tried to take away all his pain into her chest, while he cried his heart out in her arms. I want him back, Kaa-chan, I want him back. He sobbed heavily, making her kiss his head and rub his back soothingly. Shit's alright, she whispered when she felt him go limp in her arms after 15 minutes of crying, when the emotional drain of the day caught up with his mind and he fell asleep. She picked him up and smiled sadly when she saw Tobirama and Tsunade walk up to her, both donning black Senju robes too. He isn't taking it well, is he? Asked Tobirama with a hint of concern in his ever-stoic voice, making her shake her head sadly. She brushed his hair while his head rested on her shoulder, his soft breaths on her neck making her feel him get in his deep slumber. He just needs some time, Oji-san, he'll be alright, she said softly, more to assure herself, while he just nodded grimly. Tsunade saw the twins looking really tired too, along with Kushina, who had tear marks for her friend Mikoto's loss. Kushina, let's go home now, we all need the rest. Might as well stay at your house, alright? She asked, making Kushina nod. The more people the better, and a change of atmosphere might to her blonde goofball some good. Alright, Oji-san, you come too please. She said softly so as to not wake the child in her arms, and the Senju head nodded sadly, not saying anything as they made their way out of the memorial grounds. Tobirama saw Hiruzen glancing at them though, averted his eyes in shame as soon as he met his own, making him look straight ahead. It's too late for regrets now, what's done has been done. All we can do is make sure the loss doesn't pile up anymore, he thought, glancing at the sleeping blonde worriedly. Mito and Menma just stayed silent at the whole affair, since they saw how much their brother was hit with the loss of a close friend. They knew he hardly ever made friends, and to lose a close one must have hurt him a lot. Uzumaki Namikaze households. The 5 people walked into the house, keeping their footwear in the racks while Kushina passed on it, not willing to put Naruto down and accidentally wake him up. He had already not slept for even an hour last night when the whole village was up in turmoil at the news of the massacre. She walked up the stairs and into his room, placing him in his bed gently and tucked the blankets in. She smiled when he snuggled in the newfound warmth and was about to walk out when she heard a small mumble. Shisu. She heard the soft sniffle from the sleeping boy's sleep, making her heart clench. She pulled his blanket sideways and got in to embrace him and brush his hair softly while he cuddled up in her arms quickly. She could never get over how cute he looked when he purred softly in his sleep, especially when he hugged her and softly sang a soft little lullaby to lull him into sleep like she always did when he had nightmares in his earlier years and couldn't sleep. The 4 watched through the slightly open door and left the mother and son to their own terms. I'll show you 2 to the guest rooms, Mito said politely, making the 2 Senjus nod and follow her while Menma walked back into his room. On the way he glanced back into his brother's room with a blank look for a few moments before stepping in his own and going to sleep. That night the skies wept in remembrance of the great loss of life that the village had suffered, and it rained heavily. The heavens themselves wept, and the whole village slept in the dark and a much too glum and silent night while they all grieved for the huge loss in their homes. Next morning, Naruto woke up with a small yawn, and his eyes traveled to the clock by his bedside. He saw it was already really close to noon and was surprised that he had missed his early morning training, but after a moment, knew he couldn't care less for training today. He got up and out of his room in his nightwear, which he knew his mother must have changed him into while he was asleep. He really must have been out of it, he mused, and stepped in the kitchen to take out a bottle of milk from the fridge. His ears picked up on sounds from the garden. He walked to the glass door and saw Tobirama and Tsunade sitting there with his mother while his siblings were in the middle of training with pervy Sage. He saw down by Tobirama's side, who said nothing, and both sat in silence when an arm wrapped around Naruto's shoulder and pulled him in a hug. "How are you feeling, Naru-chan?" asked the soft and concerned voice of his mother, making him smile softly and snuggle in her arms. He said nothing and enjoyed the calmness that covered him each time she hugged him. His arms wrapped around his mother, tightly like a lifeline, who held him and hugged him back happily. Tobirama and Tsunade couldn't help but smile at the cute mother-son and knew how much the 2 loved each other. Meanwhile, Menma saw his brother in his mother's arms in a warm hug and clenched his fist when he turned his glance at Drea, who had just dispatched Mito with a punch to her stomach and had ordered her to cool off. "Alright kiddo, come on, let's see what you got," came the happy voice of the Toad Sage, and Menma shot off in his Uzumaki swirling fist taijutsu stance and engaged him. He vented out everything he felt when he traded blows with the Sannin, who didn't even look like he was trying. His ears picked up on a small conversation between Tsunade and Tobirama. "Naruto is much better at taijutsu, Oji-san," she whispered out of Kushina in Naruto's earshot, and a growl died down in his throat when he saw Tobirama just nod. "Hey Menma, keep your focus on the spar now, will you?" came the shout of Drea, and he felt a fist connect to his cheek and flew backward from the force. Drea sighed when he saw how little progress they were making and rubbed his forehead tiredly. He remembered how quickly Minato used to pick things up, and he just wished that Menma would have picked up at least some of his. His thoughts trailed off when he felt a sudden spike in chakra. He focused his eyes on Menma, whose eyes were now yellow and slitted instead of the usual violet orbs, and he was releasing a crazy amount of chakra. That's the Kyuubi's chakra. He has finally tapped into it. Amazing, such power and purity. He thought as he gazed at the boy who was standing up, and grinned. This was what he had been pushing him for all the time, and now finally it had happened. All the people on the sidelines turned their gazes to the sudden spike in chakra. "What is that chakra, Oji-san?" asked Tsunade while he kept his eyes narrowed at the red head who was almost glowing with a bright yellow sheen from the chakra he was emitting. "That is the Kyuubi's chakra," he stated stoically, making Tsunade fall silent. "But it doesn't feel anything like what I felt 8 years ago," she whispered, but his sharp ears caught it and Tobirama nodded. "That's because it is completely pure and untainted by the malice and hatred of the Kyuubi. Minato ripped its soul and gave his twin children pure chakra at their disposal." He surmised and couldn't help but be impressed as he now understood why Minato had done what he had. Tsunade glanced at the blonde sitting on Kushina's lap, looking at his brother with a smile. He has taken all the hatred and malice of the beast and sealed it up in himself. That is why his brother can tap into a pure source of chakra so easily. She mused and turned her eyes back to the redhead boy standing in the middle of the clearing. Menma stood up and couldn't help but feel awe at the power that was coursing through his veins. So this was the special chakra that his mother and godfather had been trying to unlock, he mused, gazing at his slightly glowing hand with a translucent shining cloak. Amazing, such power, he thought, clenching his fist, and smirked as he felt the raw power within him. Kushina knew what that chakra was and was keeping a narrow eye if there was any chance of him losing control, though the chances were really slim seeing as it had none of the hatred or malice exuding from the boy. She tightened her hug on Naruto and pulled him closer, while biting her lip nervously. All the hatred and malice is within him, she thought guiltily as she placed a soft kiss on the back of his head, but Naruto was too intrigued in seeing his brother release such humongous amounts of chakra. He couldn't help but smile as he saw his brother finally unlock the special chakra that his mother had told him about. Now he too saw how powerful it felt, but he felt a strange pull from it, and suddenly, his stomach started burning a bit. He clenched his hand on his stomach as the pain was increasing. It felt like his insides were being ripped apart, and heard a low and demonic whisper in his head. "My chakra, release me so I can get it back." He heard and clutched his head with his hands to make the rumbling go. Kushina saw her son squirming around in her arms, and worry cut through her heart when she saw him clutching his head tightly and wincing in pain. "Naru-chan?" she asked worriedly, turning him around when Naruto felt a pulse go off in his stomach and his eyes widened as a flash of pain rocked his body. "Ah, it hurts," he screamed, clutching his stomach and curling up in a ball to keep the pain inside from growing, but his efforts were futile. "Naru-chan, what's wrong?" shouted Kushina worriedly when she saw him clutching his head and stomach tightly. Tobirama immediately rushed to the two and crouched down to see the boy squirming in pain. "Ka-chan, make it go away, it hurts," he whispered with a tear, making her heart drop when she realized what was happening as he let out another blood-curdling scream. "It hurts so much," he screamed in agony, making her tear up herself, and her mind went blank when she saw her baby boy in such pain. Tobirama instantly took charge and ripped the buttons of his nightshirt open to see the seal on the boy's stomach appear over his skin and glow a bright red. The Kyuubi has sensed his chakra and is trying to weaken the seal by pushing what little demonic chakra was left to him. He surmised quickly, and instantly his hands went through 18 strange hand seals, and his fingers started glowing with kanji appearing over them for seal and a blue fire covering them. He slammed his fingers on the boy's stomach and twisted them clockwise, making Naruto's eyes roll back in his head, and fell unconscious from the sudden influx of chakra and huge amounts of pain. Kushina saw her son fall unconscious and brought him up in her arms and hugged him tightly. Her body trembled in fright at how she had locked up when her son needed her, while she should have placed the tightening seal over him instead of Tobirama. She sobbed hysterically while Drea and the twins rushed to the fore there. Tsunade tried to calm the crying mother down, but to no avail as she saw her crying her heart out while laying kisses all over his head. "What happened to Tobirama-sama?" asked Drea in a serious tone, making the Senju glance at Menma for a moment and to the spot where he had unlocked his chakra and narrowed his eyes when he saw the plants there grown up quite a bit that what should be normal before he turned to the white-haired Sanin. "Sensei, take the twins inside," he stated in a commanding voice, getting a nod from the blonde Sanin, who took the two away while Mito tried to stay for her Aniki but relented after a few moments and went in. Tobirama saw that they were out of earshot and turned his eyes to Jiraiya, who was still waiting for a response, and nodded. When Menma tapped into his special chakra, the QB felt it and tried to loosen up the seal by pushing in his demonic chakra into the boy's seal. That was what made Naruto writhe in agony, he stated, getting a nod from the white-haired Sanin. He turned his eyes to Kushina and his eyes softened when he put his hand on her shoulder and gave it a squeeze, making her teary eyes turn to him. "He's alright, Kushina, I have tightened the seal. He'll wake up in a few hours." He trailed off when he saw her bury her face in his neck and cry. "He was screaming for my help, Oji-san, and I locked up when he needed me the most," she sobbed, making him smile sadly. He rubbed her head softly to calm her down. "It's alright, Kushina, you just went into a little shock at seeing him in such pain. You are a mother and you love him too much. It is only natural it happened." He spoke warmly, making her sobs lighten a bit at hearing the truths behind his words and nod. But she still should have suppressed the demonic chakra. It was so dark and foul, just like she remembered, even if it was in such a small amount that only she had felt it. She tightened her arms around her boy and got up, picking him up in her arms, and went in towards the couch. She laid his head down on her lap and let him sleep. She saw a blanket cover up her son to see her daughter tucking her brother in and smiled, motioning her to come to her. She kissed her forehead softly while Mito looked at her tear-stained cheeks and the sleeping form of her Aniki worriedly. "Ka-chan, what happened to Naru?" she asked worriedly, making her smile. "Nothing for you to worry about, Mito. He'll wake up in a few hours, don't worry. He's fine," she said softly, making her nod nervously. "Kushina," she heard and saw Tobirama sit beside her on an armchair. "We must tell him about his burden now. It is time," he stated, making her bite her lip and look down at his cute face. She rubbed his whiskers and felt him purr softly and smiled. "All right," she whispered softly, making Tobirama nod. He would have to make his mental condition even stronger if he was to resist the demonic influences, he mused when he remembered how he was clutching his head, no wonder trying to make the beast fall silent. "Is the seal fine, Tobirama-sama?" asked Jiraiya, breaking him out of his thoughts, and he nodded. "Yes, the seal is perfectly fine. I have tightened it more, so he shouldn't be having any further problems." Minato made sure the seal he placed was strong enough, so the beast had the least amount of chances to influence his boy, he surmised, making the Sanin nod. But still one question bugged him, since he too had felt the slight demonic chakra come from the boy. "How much demonic chakra is sealed within the boy?" he asked, making Tobirama fall silent and run the calculations in his head. He had studied the seals of the three children over the years and knew how much each of them held. The twins hold 4 taels worth of yin and yang chakra without any of its influence, each respectively, with Menma having the yang part. He trailed off when his face dawned a realization and his eyes snapped back to the overgrown patch in the garden from earlier. "Tobirama-sama?" asked Jiraiya, making his eyes turn back to him and shake off his thought and kept it in his mind for later. "Yes, as I was saying, Naruto has all of the negative emotions compressed along with 1 tael's worth of chakra from the beast within him, giving his siblings free reign over their chakra reserves without the fear of any chances of losing control," he surmised, making the Toad Sage nod with a smile. This was good. No wonder the twins were children of prophecy, he mused happily at the raw potential Menma now held with his secondary chakra source awakened. Tobirama's gaze turned back to the patch of overgrown grass and narrowed in on it in deep thought. That boy's chakra reserves are filled full of yang chakra from his Uzumaki heritage, as well as the Kyubi's pure yang chakra. Is it possible that he has awakened the... His thoughts trailed off as his gaze was on the sleeping blonde whose mother was brushing his hair softly with a fond smile, making him smile himself. Though this new matter would need a little looking into, he mused. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting. And also check out my other playlists, hope you would like them too.